Chapter 725. Impulse was the devil. Now, Su Qinghui had fully understood this sentence. At that time he was indeed impulsive. Later he wanted to explain his incompetence. During the process he was afraid that others would see through him. Even though he knew that he felt guilty towards Su Qingsang, he didn't dare to show too much intimacy. All of this was his fault. He couldn't say more to defend himself. His voice became very soft, and there was a hint of helplessness in his bitterness. I really just did it on impulse. Li Qianxue looked at him and found that she was a little out of control. This wasn't good. She still remembered and was still conflicted, which meant that she hadn't let go. She had to learn to let go. The wind seemed to be colder. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui and took a step back. It is said that the feelings between men and women are also caused by impulse. Li Qianxue's voice was very soft. She looked at him with a slightly cold gaze. Because of impulse I fell in love with someone. Because of impulse I wanted to get someone. After getting him I realized that impulse really hurt people. She used his words to counter him. Su Qinghui's hand relaxed just like that. Li Qianxue took another big step back. As soon as she turned around, a gust of wind blew over. Li Qianxue's footsteps paused for a moment. In that instant, big drops of rain fell from above her head. She stood on the side of the road and there was nowhere to hide. Of course Su Qinghui saw it too. In a short while he quickly took off his suit jacket and covered her head. It's raining very heavily. Let me send you to the car first. There was no umbrella now and the car wasn't here. If she refused again she was afraid that she would be completely wet. Li Qianxue's body didn't move and her back was stiff. Su Qinghui looked at her with a slightly helpless expression. Would you rather get sick than accept my help? Yes. Li Qianxue nodded. I'd rather get sick than accept your help. The atmosphere was stagnant, and the rain outside was getting heavier and heavier. Su Qinghui felt helpless and sighed softly. Why do you have to do this? If you get wet and get sick, won't you worry the old master? Even if you accept my help this time, so what? Of course, what would happen? Li Qianxue wanted to say, but the rain above her head was indeed getting heavier. Su Qinghui covered her head with his suit jacket. Most of his body was already wet. Li Qianxue still wanted to say something, but Su Qinghui walked to her side and gently touched her with his shoulder. Let's go. If the rain gets any heavier we won't be able to leave. Li Qianxue's footsteps were very slow, but she was led forward by him. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and Su Qinghui was almost completely soaked. Li Qianxue's upper body was protected by him and covered with a suit, so she didn't get wet at all. However, the high heels on her feet affected her speed, especially when going up and down the stairs. Su Qinghui used his shoulder as support. He held the corner of his suit jacket with one hand and held her shoulder with the other so that she wouldn't fall. When Su Qinghui's shoulder touched her, Li Qianxue's body stiffened for a moment. His scent was still on the jacket, a scent she was all too familiar with. Realizing that she was distracted, Li Qianxue quickened her pace. Get in the car. Su Qinghui's car was parked opposite the hotel. He opened the car door. It was too late for Li Qianxue to retreat. She could only get in the car. Her head wasn't much wet, but her body and feet were wet. Su Qinghui kept his suit jacket on her head so that she wouldn't be drenched in the rain. Su Qinghui was completely drenched. He closed the car door and quickly went around to the other side to get in the car. He opened the locker in front of him, took out a clean towel and handed it to Li Qianxue. You can wipe it. No need. She sat there and didn't want to take it. You can use it yourself. Wipe the water off your body. I'll send you home. Su Qinghui was very stubborn. He put the towel in Li Qianxue's hand, took out a tissue on the table, and casually wiped the water off his face. Li Qianxue looked at him and her gaze fell on the towel in her hand. She wasn't actually very wet. Just now, Su Qinghui was blocking the direction of the wind, so the rain fell on him. She casually wiped herself twice and handed the towel back to Su Qinghui. Thank you. Su Qinghui took the towel from her hand and thanked her. Li Qianxue frowned slightly. He was the one who gave her the towel. She used it and he was thanking her? Su Qinghui dried his hair. It was actually very wet. It was really uncomfortable. He glanced at Li Qianxue. It takes at least an hour and a half to drive back to the Li family. Why don't you go to my place? You can take a shower and change your clothes? Su Qinghui? My company is nearby, Xingda Garden. Do you remember it? I've been living there for more than a year. If you don't have time to send me home, I can ask Xiaojia to pick me up. Qianxue, I don't want to do anything to you. I just want to tell you that it's only 10 minutes from here to Xingda Garden. Even if you ask Xiaojia to pick you up, It'll take you an hour and a half to get back to the Li family. Are you sure you want to wear these wet clothes for an hour and a half? Li Qianxue was silent. She was a little misophobic. It was fine if her upper body was clean. Her pants were all stuck to her body because of the rain, and her shoes were also wet. She felt very uncomfortable. Don't worry, it's just a matter of taking a shower and changing clothes. Su Qinghui saw that Li Qianxue still wanted to refuse, so he couldn't help but add, I don't want you to catch a cold. This sudden concern made Li Qianxue's face darken. Before she could say anything, Su Qinghui had already started the car. She wanted to stop him, but she couldn't say it. The rain was very heavy. Even with the windshield wipers on, the road ahead couldn't be seen clearly. Su Qinghui's car was very slow. It wasn't the evening rush hour yet, and there were many cars on the road in Lin City. There were several buildings in this area that were built by the Li family back then. 2 of them were built by her and Su Qinghui together. Su Qinghui's car turned a corner in front of him. He glanced at her from the corner of his eye and followed her line of sight to see the buildings in front of him, including the building at the end of the road. The neighborhood he was living in now, Xingda Garden. There's a new school next to Xingda Garden, and the price has increased a lot. Second-hand houses are in high demand. His voice made Li Qianxue turn her gaze to look at him. Su Qinghui was focused on driving and didn't seem to notice her gaze. I still remember that you and I worked overtime for many days for this Xingda Garden. Li Qianxue didn't say anything, but she naturally remembered. She wouldn't deny her cooperation with Su Qinghui in business. She also wouldn't deny that Su Qinghui, who was serious about his work and always had a good eye, really made her heart flutter at that time. She still remembered that the land in Xingda Garden wasn't big back then. After calculating the green rate and floor area ratio, the neighborhood wasn't big enough. At that time, the housing prices in Lin City had just begun to rise. The planning department and the development department wanted to build single apartments. Small apartments. One had to know that in those years, single apartments were also very popular. But Su Qinghui didn't agree. He led his people to investigate the surrounding environment, did interviews and submitted a report. He said that there were several schools in this area. There were primary schools, middle schools, and international kindergartens. In the future, there would definitely be many young couples who wanted to buy houses in this area. Of course, young people and investors would buy single apartments, but those who were more capable and could continue to stay were definitely young couples with children. At that time, there was no concept of so-called school district housing, but Su Qinghui stood his ground and resisted the pressure of the board of directors. Through hard work, he bought a piece of land next to it, and that was how the current Xingda Tea Garden came into being. Not long after the market opened, the concept of school district housing began to appear. And Su Qinghui only asked people to publicize in this direction. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the concept of school district housing to appear. Especially after the third high school near Xingda had a few top students in the college entrance examination, it was hard to find a house in Xingda. There were even people and relatives of the Li family who came to buy houses. At that time, Li Qianxue was one of the few people who supported Su Qinghui. Her recognition of his work ability made her put aside her prejudices and accept every decision he made. During that time, Su Qinghui was responsible for doing the outside work well and solving the outside problems. And she was responsible for solving the opposition within the company. Under such sincere cooperation, it could be considered one of the few times they got along very well. No, it wasn't just that time. For a long time, as long as the 2 of them didn't get involved in family matters, if they only talked about the company, the atmosphere between the 2 of them could be considered good. The sound of the rain was very loud and the car was very quiet. Li Qianxue didn't respond to Su Qinghui's words. She thought that perhaps she had defined it wrong from the beginning. Su Qinghui would be a very good collaborator and work partner, but he might not be a very good husband or a qualified father. She should have understood this back then. If that was the case, their ending might be different now. Qianxue? We're here. While she was distracted, the car had already stopped in the underground parking lot where Su Qinghui lived. Li Qianxue got out of the car and looked at the environment in front of her. They had participated in the design of the building and the design of the building at that time. She was the one who had decided on this apartment because it faced the artificial lake in the middle of the neighborhood. From afar she could see a park in front. During the divorce, she had given this apartment to Su Qinghui in order to get him to sign it quickly. She didn't expect him to live here. She thought that with his pride, he wouldn't be willing to live in the apartment she gave him. You like this neighborhood very much. Do you still remember it? Su Qinghui led her in the direction of the elevator. His voice was gentle, and she could faintly hear a trace of nostalgia. Li Qianxue looked at her high heels that were wet by the rain and didn't respond to his words. In her heart, she had already vaguely guessed why Su Qinghui lived here. Li Qianxue had many properties under her name, but the apartment she left behind in Xingda Garden was a little different. She had personally participated in the renovation of this apartment, and it was designed according to her preferences. At that time she liked this floor and this apartment design very much. She had planned to give this apartment to Su Yusin as a birthday present, so she put more effort into it than other places. The sound of the elevator reminded her that she was distracted again. The stickiness on her body made her very uncomfortable. She stepped out of the elevator with a cold face. Su Qinghui looked at her and didn't say anything. He calmly opened the door with his fingerprint lock and motioned for Li Qianxue to enter. Li Qianxue took a look at the door. The furniture was still the same as what she had originally picked. It was also very clean. It wasn't to the extent of being devoid of life, but it wasn't like a normal single apartment, which always looked messy. Su Qinghui entered the door one step ahead of her. He casually threw his coat on the porch. "You should take a shower first." He found a new pair of slippers, a bath towel and toiletries. "No one has used the guest bathroom. You can take a shower there." He said this because he was afraid that Li Qianxue would mind. Li Qianxue glanced at him and didn't say anything. "Or, would you prefer to take a bath in the bathroom in the master bedroom?" As if realizing that his words could easily be misunderstood, Su Qinghui added, "I don't really use the bathtub, but I have asked the auntie to disinfect and clean it regularly." Most of Li Qianxue's body was sticky and wet, so naturally, it was uncomfortable. She usually liked to take a bath at home. It was a rare time of day for her to relax. "Come with me." Su Qinghui seemed to know what she was thinking. He, who knew her habits very well, quickly went to the master bedroom. Li Qianxue took 2 steps and stood there with some hesitation. Su Qinghui came out very quickly. "The water is ready. You can go take a shower first." Li Qianxue glanced at him and didn't refuse. She turned around and went to the bathroom. The master bedroom was very clean and tidy. The quilt was folded neatly and there was a book on the bedside. The room wasn't big, but it was filled with Su Qinghui's scent. At this moment, Li Qianxue regretted it. She couldn't help but walk out. She wanted to go to the guest bathroom outside and take a quick shower. However, as soon as she walked out, she saw Su Qinghui's back as he entered the guest bathroom. Li Qianxue stood there and didn't move. After thinking for a while, she continued. The jacuzzi was very big and she had chosen it. The warm water washed over her body, eliminating most of the discomfort of being drenched in the rain. Li Qianxue closed her eyes. Her body was comfortable, but her heart began to feel annoyed. She must have gone crazy today to follow Su Qinghui home. She even took a bath in his bathroom? However, when Li Qianxue saw Su Qinghui say to her, "I don't want you to catch a cold," she inexplicably agreed. Thinking of this, Li Qianxue couldn't even feel at ease taking a bath. The annoyance in her heart increased. This bath was very long. After half an hour, Li Qianxue finally cleaned herself up. She put on the bathrobe that Su Qinghui had prepared, tied the belt tightly and checked it again and again. Li Qianxue decided to go out and get her phone to call Xiao Zhao. He should still be waiting for her near the hotel banquet hall. She asked him to bring her a set of clothes. She just left the room. Before she could get her phone, she saw Su Qinghui's figure coming out of the kitchen. "You're done bathing?" "Just in time. Let's eat something." In front of her, Su Qinghui was wearing a suit of home clothes. He came out of the kitchen with a bowl in his hand. Chapter 726. "You didn't eat anything at night before you left. You should eat something." Li Qianxue stood there without moving and watched Su Qinghui put the bowl on the dining table. She smelled the faint aroma of food in the air. Her lips pursed into a straight line. Su Qinghui knew how to cook? Her hand was still hanging above her bag. The bag was already wet and there were still water droplets on it. She retracted her fingertips and looked at Su Qinghui. He had just taken a shower and his hair was still a little damp. He put the bowl in his hand on the dining table, turned around and went to the kitchen again. Li Qianxue stood there and watched him bring out another bowl. It was only then that she saw clearly that the bowl was filled with noodles. "Come over and eat," Su Qinghui called her. Li Qianxue stood there without moving. She took out her phone again and planned to call Xiao Zhao. "Do you want Xiao Zhao to buy you clothes? Even if he comes over, he won't be so fast, right? Or are you afraid that I'll poison the noodles?" Su Qinghui's self-deprecation didn't get Li Qianxue's praise. She stood there with a cold face and insisted on calling Xiao Zhao. No one answered. She didn't give up and called again, but still no one answered. Li Qianxue wanted to curse. Every time at a critical moment Xiao Zhao would drop the ball. "Let's eat. Aren't you hungry?" Su Qinghui called her again. "If you don't come over and eat, the noodles will be cold." Li Qianxue stood there without moving. Her lips were tightly pursed, forming a cold straight line. Holding the phone, she called Xiao Zhao again. Before the phone was picked up, Su Qinghui had already walked in front of her, took the phone away and put it aside. "It's just a bowl of noodles. You don't have to be so nervous, do you?" Before Li Qianxue could react, he had already led her to the dining table, pulled out a chair and asked her to sit down. In front of her was a bowl of steaming noodles. She smelled the aroma of the food as soon as she sat down. The noodles were beef noodles. Thinly sliced marinated beef, with vegetables underneath and a layer of chopped green onions. It looked very delicious. Li Qianxue sat still until Su Qinghui stuffed a pair of chopsticks into her hand. "Don't worry, it's really not poisoned." Li Qianxue held the chopsticks in her hand, and her body was a little stiff. Su Qinghui had already turned to the other side and sat down. Seeing that she was still in a daze, he looked up and asked, "Are you really not hungry?" Li Qianxue wanted to say that she wasn't hungry, but at that moment her stomach let out a loud growl. She didn't look good. She had a meeting at noon, so she didn't feel like eating after lunch. In the evening she went to the banquet hall. Before she had time to eat, she ran into Su Qinghui and left early. "Let's eat. It shouldn't taste bad." Li Qianxue was quite picky about what she ate. Although the Li family usually focused on bland food, the more bland the food was, the more it showed the chef's skills. Preserving the original flavor of food was much more difficult to make than heavy oil and spicy food. She didn't want to eat it at first, but in the current situation, it didn't seem to make a difference whether she ate it or not. She went to Su Qinghui's house, took a shower and then had dinner. Li Qianxue didn't think too much about it. She picked up some noodles with her chopsticks and tasted it. She was stunned for a moment after taking a bite. The taste was indeed good. Cooking noodles seemed easy, but in fact a little more or a little less heat would affect the taste of the noodles. She couldn't help but look up at Su Qinghui. He focused on eating the noodles. Occasionally, he raised his head and suddenly smiled when his eyes met hers. "Is it bad?" Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She really couldn't say that such noodles tasted bad. After all, it wasn't bad. The bowl was a big one and she didn't have a big appetite. After eating half of it, she put down her chopsticks. In fact, she didn't eat much at night. Su Qinghui had a good appetite. He finished all the noodles. He found that she still had half a bowl left. He didn't force her to eat. Instead, he took her bowl and started eating. "You?" Li Qianxue's expression was a little bad. "I've eaten this before." "I know. Why are you still eating if you know?" Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui and picked up the chopsticks. The pair of chopsticks was used by her. "It's not good to waste food." Su Qinghui's words made Li Qianxue don't know what to say for a moment. It's not good to waste food? The Li family was considered an aristocratic family. Although Old Master Li had always advocated saving, it was impossible for the kitchen to cook perfectly. Why hadn't Su Qinghui been like this before? Before she could say anything, Su Qinghui had already finished the rest of her noodles. Li Qianxue was very embarrassed. He used the chopsticks she had used to eat the leftover noodles, which made her feel very uncomfortable. She even had a feeling that he did it on purpose to make her feel uncomfortable. Su Qinghui got up, put the bowl in the kitchen and came out. There would naturally be hourly workers to clean up tomorrow. Now he wanted to spend time with Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue went to the living room. She was about to call Xiao Zhao again. Su Qinghui came over and sat down next to her. "Aren't you curious about how I know how to cook?" Li Qianxue stopped making the phone call. "Why should I be curious? But I want to tell you. But I don't want to know." Li Qianxue lowered her head and was about to make another call. Su Qinghui took her phone away again and put it aside. "You know what? Ever since I divorced you, I've learned a lot of things." "Really?" Li Qianxue wasn't in a hurry to snatch the phone back. "So, should you thank me for divorcing you?" "I'm grateful to you not because you divorced me." Su Qinghui looked at her focused gaze, and he could see her shadow in it. "It's because of your tolerance and patience for me all these years." Putting aside the fact that he had replaced Su Qingsang and Su Peixian, Su Qinghui also knew that he had not fulfilled his responsibilities as a husband to Li Qianxue all these years. Only Li Qianxue, who looked smart and capable, was very stubborn when it came to relationships. She knew that he didn't love her, but she still plunged in and endured it for so many years. For more than a year, he had worked hard and tried his best to get close to her, but it didn't change Li Qianxue's opinion of him. It had already made him uncomfortable, painful, and conflicted. But what about Li Qianxue? There were some things that couldn't be thought about. Thinking about it made him feel heart-wrenching pain. Su Qinghui held Li Qianshua's hand and looked at her with a gentle gaze that he had never seen before. I didn't do a good job in the past, whether it's being a husband or a father, but I will work hard in the future. I will be a qualified husband and a qualified father. Qianshua, I don't expect you to give me a chance anymore. It's your freedom to give me a chance or not. I just hope that I can always follow you, accompany you, and help you when you need it. Whether you believe it or not, this is what I hope for now. His grip was slightly tight and there was a burning warmth in it. In the past, Li Qianshua only hoped that he would have her in his eyes, but she couldn't see her in his eyes. At this moment she found her in his eyes, and his eyes were filled with her shadow. Li Qianshua felt an electric current pass from his hand to her hand, and then from her hand to her heart. She could clearly hear her heartbeat quicken. She tried to look away and then she tried to pull back her hand. However, there was only Su Qinghui's serious face in front of her. I love you. I'm willing to use the rest of my life to fulfill my determination. I'll let you know that I'm serious. Qianshua, please believe me. I really love you. The living room was very quiet. Even at this age, Li Qianshua had pitifully little experience in love. All her experience in love came from Su Qinghui. Her silent reaction was not within Su Qinghui's expectations. He thought that she didn't believe him and he didn't intend to say more. It was better to do more than to say more. He would definitely show it to him. Qianshua, just watch me in the future. Li Qianshua hadn't recovered from that realization. Her phone suddenly rang. It was a call from Xiao Zhao. Li Qianshua quickly retracted her hand and sat up straight. Her face was cold. It's useless. I don't need your company and I won't need your help. Qianshua? Li Qianshua didn't look at him and picked up the phone. Madam, where are you? Xiao Zhao had just gone to the toilet. When he came back he found that there were many missed calls on his hand. It's still raining heavily. Are you still in the banquet hall? Do you want me to drive to the door to pick you up? No need. I'm not in the hotel now. Come to Xingda Garden to pick me up. Xingda Garden? Xiao Zhao looked confused. Why did you go to Xingda Garden? Yes. Li Qianshua didn't want to explain further. When you come over, bring me a set of clothes. Clothes? Are your clothes wet? Yes. Li Qianshua looked at the time. There should be a department store nearby that's not closed yet. Come pick me up after you buy some clothes. Drive the car directly to the underground parking lot of Building 8. Okay, I got it. Xiao Zhao hung up the phone. Li Qianshua found that Su Qinghui had gone to the kitchen at some point. When he came out again he was holding a glass of juice in his hand. Cherry juice. You'll like it. Li Qianshua looked at the glass of juice and didn't reach out. She looked up at Su Qinghui with undisguised displeasure in her eyes. Su Qinghui, don't do these things. It's useless. Qianshua? Whether you learn to cook or learn anything, it has nothing to do with me. Li Qianshua's voice was cold. I don't want to know and I don't care. Of course, if you are willing to stay away from me in the future, I think I will be more grateful to you. The only thing I need you to do is to stay away from me and don't appear in front of me again. Okay, I got it. Su Qinghui nodded, but he still placed the glass of juice in her hand. However, I can't stay away from you now. After all, you're at my house. You, drink it. I don't think you ate much for dinner. Su Qinghui pulled her hand and let her take the glass of juice. I squeezed it just now and put it in the fridge. It's just right to drink now. Li Qianshua held the glass of cold cherry juice and looked at Su Qinghui. In the end, she couldn't help but say, it seems that after leaving the Li Corporation you're getting worse and worse. Not only do you have time to cook, but you also have time to do these things. It's not too bad. Su Qinghui smiled. Actually, I would have done it before the divorce. I just didn't spend time on it. After all, the Li family wasn't a place where he needed to do anything. Good disguise. He clearly knew how to do it, but he pretended not to. She had really been fooled by him for so many years. Qianshua, if it weren't for the fact that you can't control the weather, I would have reason to suspect that even if it didn't rain today, you would have found a way to bring me here. Right? Qianshua, I'm not that cunning. Yes, you're not that cunning. You just have a way to deceive me and take revenge on me. Qianshua. All right. I don't want to talk to you. Now either you go away or I go away. Su Qinghui looked at her side profile. In the end, he couldn't say that he didn't want to go away. In the end, he could only stand up and return to his room. Not long after Su Qinghui returned to his room, Xiao Zhao came. He was carrying a few bags in his hand. Other than high-end custom-made clothes, Li Qianshua also had a few brands that she liked. Xiao Zhao was her chauffeur. Every time she went shopping he would help her carry the bags. A few of the shop assistants at the counter knew him. Without needing him to say anything, they directly matched a set of clothes and sent it to Li Qianxue. "Wait for me for a while. I'll change and go home." Li Qianxue changed her clothes and came out. She found that Su Qinghui had also left the room. Seeing her come out, Su Qinghui's face was a little disappointed. "You're leaving?" Li Qianxue didn't even look at Su Qinghui. She just walked forward. "Qianxue?" When Li Qianxue heard this, she left without looking back. Su Qinghui stood there and watched her back disappear behind the door. He turned around and saw the glass of juice on the coffee table. However, he didn't drink a single mouthful. It was still full. Su Qinghui took a step forward and picked up the glass of cherry juice to take a sip. He had clearly tasted it before. It was sweet. Now that he drank it again, it felt extremely bitter. When Li Qianxue entered the venue, she saw a few familiar faces. Today was the Top 10 Youth Award ceremony in Lin City. She was invited to be the presenter. With her status in Lin City, she was indeed very suitable. The Li family never minded promoting new people. Wu Jinyao and Qiu Yanbo were among the top 10 youth last year. She had glanced at this year's top 10 youth before. She found that other than Wang Tao and Wei Ting, she didn't know any of the rest. It was normal for Wang Tao to be chosen first. As the president of Tianyu Group in Lin City, he represented the direction of Tianyu Group's decision-making. He was worthy of this award. However, she didn't expect Wei Ting to win this award as well. It surprised her a little. After entering the door, her seat was at the front. Coincidentally, she saw a few familiar faces. Li Junxing, Chief Zhou, Chief Qin, Chief Gao, and Secretary Li were all old acquaintances. After greeting the leaders, she sat down on the seat with her nameplate. As she sat down, she also saw that the seat next to hers was Su Qinghui's. Li Qianxue's face darkened when she saw those 3 words. It was true that he was everywhere. Chapter 727. That day, Su Qinghui took her to his apartment. Although he didn't do anything to her, the words he said to her successfully made her have a dream that night. In her dream, Su Qinghui's voice echoed over and over again. "Qianxue, watch me in the future. Qianxue, I love you. Qianxue, let me stay with you." Li Qianxue closed her eyes and shook off the nightmare of that night. Yes, that's right. To her, it was a nightmare. Li Qianxue rubbed her temples. The last person she wanted to see right now was probably Su Qinghui. When she found that no one was paying attention to her, she picked up Su Qinghui's business card and moved to the seat next to hers. She didn't want to sit with Su Qinghui, not at all. However, just as she was about to put Su Qinghui's name tag on the leader's seat, the name tag in her hand was gently taken away. Li Qianxue's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly felt like she had been caught red-handed. He looked at the newcomer awkwardly. Su Qinghui stood next to her, holding a name tag in one hand and leaning his other hand on the table, looking at her. He curled his lips and looked at her with a faint smile. Li Qianxue's face was inexplicably hot. "Give it back." "Give it back to you?" Su Qinghui looked at the name on it. "Are you sure?" Before Li Qianxue could finish her sentence, Su Qinghui suddenly approached her and said, "Qianxue, I really didn't know that you still—" Li Qianxue heard the unfinished meaning in his words and blushed for a moment. She was half angry, half annoyed. She tried her best to resist the urge to snatch the name tag from Su Qinghui's hand, but her expression was quite unsightly. "You're overthinking. I just wanted to put the name tag back on." "Yes." Su Qinghui nodded. Not only did he not deny her words, but he also followed her words and said, "You even want to correct my name tag when you see it is crooked. I really didn't think too much." There was a hint of a smile in his voice. Li Qianxue had never seen this side of Su Qinghui. For a moment, she didn't know whether to be angry or angry. "Su Qinghui, I understand even if you don't explain." As Su Qinghui spoke, he calmly put the nameplate away. Of course, he placed it in its original position. His business card was right next to Li Qianxue. Just this knowledge alone made him a lot happier. He was a little surprised. After all, he was not a kid in his 20s. How could he be satisfied so easily? By the time Li Qianxue realized what was going on, Su Qinghui had already sat down with a faint smile on his face. That smile made Li Qianxue feel that it was inexplicably dazzling. Just as she was about to say something, Wei Ting stood in front of her. "Qianxue, I'm so happy. You know what? You're the one who's giving me the award today." "Really?" Li Qianxue didn't expect that she would be the one to present the award to Wei Ting. "Then congratulations in advance." "Thank you." With a smile on his face, Wei Ting leaned forward a little more. "Qianxue, the person who presented the award to me was you. This is what makes me happy. As for the prize, I don't really care." As he spoke, he glanced at Su Qinghui with a hint of pride in his eyes. Su Qinghui was as still as a mountain, sitting calmly in his seat. Su Qinghui naturally noticed Wei Ting's provocative gaze. "President Su is here today too?" Wei Ting seemed to have just noticed him. "What a coincidence." "It's not a coincidence." Su Qinghui's voice was indifferent. "I happen to be one of the presenters today." Since it was the top 10 young men, there were naturally 10 presenters. Su Qinghui's tone didn't change, but the meaning revealed in his eyes made Wei Ting's pride dissipate a little. He was here to present the award, and he was here to receive the award. What was there to be proud of? President Su is old, so naturally he can only do things like presenting the award. After all, with President Su's age, he has nothing to do with young people. Right? Indeed, it has nothing to do with young people. Su Qinghui nodded and didn't intend to refute his words. "So, President Wei wants to ask, is Qianxue also old?" "I didn't mean that." Wei Ting quickly looked at Li Qianxue, his face a little nervous. Li Qianxue already despised his young age. If she misunderstood him like this, it would be even worse. Li Qianxue had a headache. Before she could say anything, the main leader had already entered, and the venue was much livelier than before. "President Wei." Su Qinghui's voice was very indifferent. "It's about to start. Your seat seems to be over there." "Qianxue, I really didn't mean that." Wei Ting didn't want to leave. He still wanted to explain to Li Qianxue clearly. "I know. Go and sit down first." Wei Ting saw that Li Qianxue really didn't look like she was going to be angry, so he was more or less relieved. "However, in order to celebrate my award, why don't we have dinner together tonight?" "We'll see. Promise me first." Wei Ting looked aggrieved. "Look, I won another award and you're the one who gave me the award. Isn't this fate destined by the heavens? Such fate is worth eating to celebrate, right?" "Wei Ting." "It's decided. I'll come back later to confirm the time with you." Before Li Qianxue could say anything, Wei Ting had already turned around and walked towards his seat. Su Qinghui sat at the side and heard the conversation between the two of them clearly. He curled his lips slightly and turned his face to look at Li Qianxue. "Do you really like such an unsteady and immature young man? This doesn't seem to have anything to do with you." "Of course it has something to do with me." Su Qinghui tilted his body and got closer and closer to her. "If you like this kind of person, I can only be wronged for a while. Let me become like this, an immature and unsteady young man." Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue turned her head and could see Su Qinghui's enlarged face in front of her. She looked at the light in his eyes expressionlessly. "First, Wei Ting isn't what you said. He also has a mature and steady side. Second, whether I like a person or not has nothing to do with his personality. But there's one thing I'm very clear about." "What?" "I definitely won't like someone who cheats people's feelings." Su Qinghui suddenly fell silent because of her words. Li Qianxue felt that the world was quiet. She sat up straight and looked ahead. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue had been to the top 10 youth award ceremony more than once. The process was similar every year. The leader's speech was the theme of this year's award ceremony. Each young man who won the award went on stage to receive the award and then gave an acceptance speech. Li Qianxue glanced at the time and saw that everyone had about 10 minutes. Wei Ting was the 7th and Wang Tao was behind him. After she flipped through the award catalog and their usual deeds, she found that Su Qinghui had sat down in his seat. She glanced at him and didn't quite understand what he was doing at such a time. However, Li Qianxue soon found out. When it was Wei Ting's turn, the host first read out Wei Ting's name and then introduced what he had done. Finally, the host began to announce, "Now, let's invite the president of Qianhui Limited Company, Mr. Su Qinghui, to present the award to the winners." Li Qianxue was about to stand up, but the introduction made her stop in her tracks. She turned to look at Su Qinghui. He received her gaze and smiled at her. Then he stood up and walked to the stage. Li Qianxue looked at his back and thought about what Su Qinghui had done just now. Could it be that he didn't want her to go on stage to present the award to Wei Ting, so he deliberately changed the award presenter to him? As soon as this thought came to mind, Li Qianxue almost immediately wanted to deny it. Would Su Qinghui be such a childish person? Thinking about his age and his usual personality, Li Qianxue really couldn't figure it out. When Wei Ting heard that the award presenter was Su Qinghui, his expression changed slightly, but only for a moment. He was on stage and was broadcasting live to all the people of Lin City. Su Qinghui went on stage and walked in front of Wei Ting calmly. He picked up the red ribbon from the etiquette lady and was about to put it on Wei Ting, but Wei Ting didn't lower his head cooperatively. He looked at Su Qinghui with a flash of hostility in his eyes. President Su, you seem to be the next award presenter, right? His voice was very soft, but the hostility in his gaze only increased. In order to coincide with the award ceremony, exciting music sounded in the hall. Su Qinghui raised the ribbon high with a faint smile on his face. President Wei's main point today is to receive the award. It doesn't seem to matter who will present the award to you, right? His voice was also very soft. The people below the stage could only see the two of them smiling harmoniously. Wei Ting gritted his teeth and glared at Su Qinghui with ridicule in his eyes. President Su, it doesn't seem to make sense for you to be jealous. After all, you're already divorced. Isn't that right? You can get back together after a divorce, but someone like President Wei probably won't have a chance. When Su Qinghui spoke, he didn't need Wei Ting to lower his head and helped him put on the ribbon. Now that there were so many people, even if Wei Ting was unwilling, he could only squeeze out a smile. Don't be smug. I'm still young. It's not up to you to decide whether I have a chance or not. Indeed. Su Qinghui turned around and took the golden trophy and certificate from the etiquette lady. He placed them in Wei Ting's hands. After all, even if I divorce Chen Xue, we still have 2 children. My relationship with her can't be broken, but it's much more difficult for you to establish a relationship with her. Wei Ting's expression finally cracked a little. Just as he was about to change his expression, Su Qinghui had already stood to the side. Countless cameras were aimed at the two of them. Su Qinghui was calm and composed, while Wei Ting, when the news came out in the newspapers and on the internet the next day, everyone thought that Wei Ting's slightly distorted face was too excited. Yes, that's right, if that expression was excitement. After Su Qinghui presented the award to Wei Ting, he returned to his seat. Wei Ting still had to give an acceptance speech, so he couldn't leave so quickly. When Su Qinghui walked to his seat and sat down, he found that Li Qianxue was staring at his face. I didn't know that you had such a trick up your sleeve. You're welcome. Su Qinghui glanced at her with a gentle gaze. The host and I happen to have a little friendship. I said that Wei Ting and I are very good friends and I hope to have this honor. He helped me change it without thinking. Not to mention the host, even the organizers and sponsors knew him. If he wanted to change the position of the award presenter, it would be a matter of minutes. Li Qianxue wasn't one of the spectators who didn't know what was going on. She saw that Wei Ting's expression was a little strange just now. What did you say to Wei Ting? I didn't say anything. What? Do you feel sorry for him? Su Qinghui, is it interesting? It wasn't that Su Qinghui couldn't hear the mockery in Li Qianxue's words, but he still nodded seriously. It's interesting because I don't like him. If you want to give him an award, even if it's just a normal relationship, I'll be jealous. Crazy. Li Qianxue turned her face away from him. Su Qinghui didn't mind expressing himself more clearly. Qianxue, don't you understand? Because I love you, no matter what man or what kind of man approaches you, I'll be unhappy. I know that I don't have the right to stop you from accepting a new relationship, but I really can't just watch you get closer and closer to another man, and your relationship gets better and better. Su Qinghui, I'm afraid you're crazy, right? Yes, I'm crazy. I'm crazy for you. Let me remind you, we're already divorced. Yes. So I'm trying my best to move you now, to let you know and believe in my feelings. Li Qianxue felt that she couldn't communicate with him anymore. At this time, it was Wang Tao's turn to receive the award. Li Qianxue's order was changed by Su Qinghui. She got up and went to the stage. Su Qinghui looked at her back, his eyes filled with love. As if sensing his gaze, Li Qianxue walked even faster. Su Qinghui was left behind with a bitter smile because of her actions. There was still a long way to go. He would not give up. He would work hard and strive to move her one day. After the award ceremony ended, Li Qianxue got up and went to the bathroom. When she came back, she was blocked by Wei Ting. He looked at her, and there was a hint of grievance on his sunny and handsome face. Qianxue, do you hate me that much? The corner of Li Qianxue's mouth twitched. Wei Ting, what are you doing? Although they were at the corner of the corridor, there might be people passing by. If you don't hate me, why didn't you go on stage and give me the award? Wei Ting, do you know how sad I was when I saw that the person on stage wasn't you? The aggrieved expression on Wei Ting's face became more and more obvious. For a moment, Li Qianxue had a feeling that the person in front of her was a child who wanted candy but couldn't get it. I'm really sad. Wei Ting took a step forward to hold her hand. Although the Top 10 Youth Award is not a particularly important award to me, if you were to give me the award at such an important moment, it would definitely make today's time more memorable. Stop. Li Qianxue wasn't affected by his words at all. Are you done? No. Wei Ting shook his head. I'm not done. Qianxue, I just want to say that you can't treat me like this. Wei Ting, you seem to have made a mistake. What? I don't have that kind of relationship with you, do I? Although we aren't now, we can develop into one in the future. Don't you think so? Wei Ting, isn't it too early for us to discuss this now? It's not early. Let's discuss it slowly. There will be a result soon. Wei Ting seemed to have thought of something and suddenly changed the topic. Don't tell me you still want to get back together with Su Qinghui? Wei Ting, my business with you has nothing to do with Su Qinghui. If you don't want to get back together with him, why do you always reject me? Wei Ting. Li Qianxue felt tired explaining her relationship with Su Qinghui. She didn't intend to say more. Anyway, it's impossible for me and Su Qinghui, and it's impossible for me and you. Understand? I don't understand. Wei Ting shook his head. It's impossible for you and Su Qinghui, but Su Qinghui said that you have 2 children. Is there an unbreakable bond between the 2 of you? Do you know how angry I was when I heard him say that? You can't even be happy after winning an award. Su Qinghui. How could he say such a thing? Li Qianxue frowned. Wei Ting, I'm telling you very seriously. You don't have to take what Su Qinghui said to heart. But this only means that I have nothing to do with him and nothing to do with you. It's impossible for me to follow you. So please make way first. I'm leaving. As she spoke, she walked out. Wei Ting followed behind her with a very aggrieved expression. He wanted to say something several times but hesitated, trying to persuade Li Qianxue. However, Li Qianxue was unmoved. The 2 of them walked a little faster. In addition, they were both preoccupied with their own thoughts, so they didn't notice that someone at the door of the bathroom behind the corner had heard their conversation. It was night at the Luo family in Lin City. What do you mean, really divorced? Luo Qing looked at his son Luo Lai. For a moment he didn't understand why Luo Lai told him this. What are you trying to say? I want to say, haven't we heard it before? Li Qianxue of the Li family divorced Su Qinghui. It's true. Luo Qing didn't say anything. He had also heard about Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue's divorce. However, recently not only had they worked together on a project, but they were also attending the award ceremony together. Many people from the aristocratic families in Lin City thought that they were probably going to get back together. I used to think it was a rumor, but now I know it's true. And Dad, do you know? I heard it very clearly today. Li Qianxue said that it's impossible for her and Su Qinghui to get back together. What are you trying to say? Luo Qing listened for a long time, but he didn't understand what Luo Lai was trying to say. Luo Yu, who was sitting next to Luo Lai, also looked at Luo Lai in confusion. Yes, brother, what are you trying to say? I want to say that Wei Ting looks too young. Li Qianxue definitely won't choose him. Since Su Qinghui can't get back together with her, it means that Su Qinghui has no chance. This way they won't have a chance. Dad, won't you have a chance? There was silence in the living room. Luo Qing looked at his son. What do you mean? Dad, you still don't understand? I told you to pursue Li Qianxue, and you'll be with Li Qianxue. Luo Lai? Brother? 2 gazes landed on Luo Lai. Luo Lai looked at his father and sister. Dad, Mom has been gone for so many years. You should have found one by now. Isn't this an opportunity just right? Think about it, who is Li Qianxue? The current president of the Li Corporation. She holds nearly half of the Li Corporation's shares. With such astonishing wealth and status, if you really get together with her, wouldn't it be a great thing for us? Luo Lai, Dad, let me finish. In the past, our status in Lin City couldn't compare to the Li family, and there were also a few old families like the Chiu family. Now, ever since that woman Luo Maishan offended Hu Jinyao, our family has been in an even worse state. Look, when they were enjoying themselves we had nothing to do with them. Now that something has happened to them, we're implicated? How can there be such a thing? Luo Lai's words made Luo Cheng and Luo Yu fall silent. They were the second family of the Luo family in Lin City. The first family was Luo Ming, who was also Luo Maishan's father. The first family had inherited most of the shares of Luoxing department store. Their status was no longer comparable. Who knew that the first family would be so stupid as to offend a formidable enemy like Hu Jinyao? Now, even if the Tianyu group no longer dealt with them, Luoxing department store had already fallen into the hands of the Tianyu group. Luo Ming had tried to make a comeback several times, but because he had offended Hu Jinyao, almost no one in Lin City dared to help them. Their status was already inferior to the other clans, and now it was even more awkward. As for Luo Ming's younger brother Luo Cheng's family, they were even more embarrassed. Dad, I've decided that you should pursue Li Qianxue and find a way to be with her. Not only will it solve our family's predicament, but it will also stop the people from Tianyu Group and Hu Jingyao from making things difficult for us. More importantly, we can also get help from the Li family. When that time comes, it will be time for us to stand at the top of Lin City's upper class again. After Luo Lai said this, the living room was silent. Even without him saying it, Luo Cheng and Luo Yu knew what the Luo family was like now. However, brother, that's easy for you to say. How could it be so easy to marry the president of the Li Group? Can it be more difficult than now? Luo Lai felt that it was possible. Dad, little you think about it from another perspective. Why did Li Qianxue divorce him? Su Qinghui must have done something to piss him off. Otherwise, why would Li Qianxue say that they had no chance at all? Also, that Wei Ting looks good, but he's too young and doesn't match Li Qianxue. I thought about it for a long time on the way back just now. I really think this plan is very feasible. Luo Qing didn't say anything, but Luo Yu was the first to be moved by him. Brother, what you said is really beneficial. After all, even if we can't borrow the Li family's power, it's equivalent to having one less powerful enemy and one more helper. That's what I mean. As Luo Lai spoke, he glanced at Luo Cheng. Besides, Dad, look at you. You don't look any worse than Su Qinghui. Or do you not believe in your own abilities? Of course not. Luo Cheng stood up and thought about Luo Lai's words. Okay, let me think about it. How should I pursue Li Qianxue? So that she can give me a chance. Chapter 728. Even if it didn't work out, it wouldn't be bad to leave a good impression in front of Li Qianxue. She was Hu Jinyao's mother-in-law, and he had a good relationship with her. He didn't believe that Hu Jinyao would continue to deal with them. Dad, I also thought of another point. Luo Lai was confident. On the way back he had already thought of it. Su Qinghui offended Li Qianxue and made her divorce him. To women, it's nothing more than a man spending a lot of time outside or not being gentle and considerate. Dad, after your mother left, you've never accepted a woman approaching you again. In this regard, you're definitely better than other men. As for being gentle and considerate, I believe you can do it too. Luo Qing didn't say anything. Luo Lai looked at him and added, most importantly, Dad, to be honest, you have another advantage, but you're much better than Su Qinghui. What? Su Qinghui has an illegitimate daughter outside. When Luo Lai said this, the smile on his face widened. In that case, it's definitely impossible for him to be as upright and elegant as he appears on the surface. On the contrary, it's very likely that his private life is quite unbearable. That's right. Luo Yu nodded and her eyes lit up. That Su Qinghui has an illegitimate daughter. I don't know why in the past, Li Qianxue has been suppressing this matter. Now it seems that they must have fallen out for some reason. Luo Qing didn't say anything. He did know that Su Qinghui had an illegitimate daughter. In the upper class who was really cleaner than the other. However, this was indeed a big deal. At least Luo Qing used to have a good relationship with his wife, and he didn't mess around outside. Thinking of the huge benefits brought by Li Qianxue, and then thinking of Li Qianxue's charming face, Luo Cheng's original 30% interest suddenly turned to 70%. Li Qianxue didn't know that she was being targeted. She was having a headache about how to get rid of Wei Ting, who was almost like a piece of sticky candy. Looking up at Wei Ting, who was sitting opposite her desk, Li Qianxue really felt a headache coming on. Wei Ting, do you know that your behavior has seriously interfered with me? It's okay. You do your thing. I'll do my thing. As Wei Ting spoke, he shook the notebook he brought. Look, I have something to do too. Just do your thing. As he spoke, he got up and walked to the coffee table next to him. It was obvious that he was going to start a fight with Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue's expression was really ugly. She stood up and walked in front of Wei Ting. Wei Ting. Don't worry, I really won't bother you. You've already disturbed me. Li Qianxue was not polite at all. Wei Ting, I don't appreciate your actions. I think there's nothing wrong with a man pursuing a woman he likes, but if he loses his sense of propriety, it will only make people feel disgusted. I don't appreciate your behavior, and I won't change my mind to like you just because of it. On the contrary, your current behavior makes me very uncomfortable. You have seriously affected my private life and my work. I want you to leave now, immediately. She had been in power for a long time, so she naturally had the aura of being in power. Such righteous words made Wei Ting's expression become a little awkward. Qianxue, I don't care what you think, but I want to tell you that I really don't like what you're doing. Li Qianxue's expression was very cold. Not to mention that we're not boyfriend and girlfriend right now. Even if we are, I want to tell you. No matter what kind of relationship it is, we need to have a sense of propriety and distance. If we lose this sense of propriety and distance, it will only make people uncomfortable. Wei Ting's face was a little gloomy. He put away his notebook and stood up. Looking at the anger on Li Qianshua's face, his expression was a little aggrieved. Qianxue, I'm sorry. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She really couldn't appreciate such behavior, nor could she accept it. I just heard that Su Qinghui's company has a new cooperation with you. Qianxue, I know that you have an inseparable bond with him. I just want to fight for another chance for myself. If you're so obsessed with me, then I can tell you that you won't have any chance at all. Wei Ting's expression was ugly. He looked at Li Qianxue and nodded heavily. Okay, I understand. He stood up straight and walked in front of Li Qianxue. He looked at her and said, Qianxue, I know that in your heart, you might think that I'm not mature enough, not steady enough, and not rational enough. But I still hope you understand. It's precisely because of my sincerity towards you that I lost my steadiness and rationality. I just want to be with you. Seeing that Li Qianxue was about to refuse again, he raised his hand. Qianxue, you don't have to say any more. I'll leave now, but I won't give up. Give me some time. I'll slowly learn how to become a qualified boyfriend who's worthy of you. Li Qianxue looked at Wei Ting and her heart was still moved. She had once given with passion. She only knew how to give, but she never took. But now there was a man who used such thoughts to say such words to her. Her expression softened a lot. Li Qianshue's expression was no longer as ugly as before. You can go. Qianxue? I'm going to work. Li Qianxue didn't want to say more. She didn't want to say that there was a man who brought her a trace of warmth after her heart had already turned cold. When Li Qianxue returned home, old Master Li hadn't eaten yet and was waiting for her in the living room. When he saw her enter the door, he waved at her. That. Li Qianxue changed her shoes and entered the door. There was some disapproval in her eyes. Didn't I say? Don't wait for me to eat. It's okay. I'm not hungry anyway. Old Master Li wasn't just waiting for Li Qianxue to come back for dinner today. There's something I want to tell you. What is it? Li Qianxue sat on the sofa. It was only then that she saw the gift boxes on the coffee table. Did any guests come? Yes. Old Master Li nodded. That's what I wanted to tell you. He pointed at the gifts on the table and then looked at Li Qianxue. These gifts were all sent by the second son of the Luo family. The Luo family? Li Qianxue thought about it in her mind and remembered who the second son of the Luo family was. You mean Luo Qing? Yes, that's him. Old Master Li nodded. He came to visit with his 2 children today. Although the Luo family is declining now, I used to be friends with his father, so I didn't refuse to see them. Dad, just tell me what it is. I'm not sure. Old Master Li shook his head. They didn't say what it was. They just said that they haven't visited for a long time. So they came to see me. Old Master Li pouted and looked at the gifts on the table. But if they just came to see me, these gifts are a bit heavy. Li Qianxue looked at the gift boxes on the table and thought of the last time the Luo family and the Song family came to visit. Dad, don't worry about it. It has nothing to do with you. Yes. Since Old Master Li had decided to hand over the company to the next generation, he didn't interfere, so naturally, he didn't know what Hu Jinyao had done. It's not a big deal anyway. Don't take it to heart. Li Qianxue decided to call Wang Tao tomorrow and ask if the Luo family had done anything recently, or if they had done something to provoke Tianyu Group again. Li Qianshue's question didn't get an answer. The next day she asked someone to investigate the Luo family. Last time, Luo Ming had already asked someone to mediate. Although the current Luoxing department store hadn't improved, it was obviously much better than when Hu Jinyao had just attacked it, and it didn't even have a foothold in Lin City. Li Qianshue's people didn't dig up any more information. After investigating, they only found that Luo Cheng's family and Luo Ming's family didn't seem to reach an agreement because of the direction of the new company. So what did Luo Cheng want through her? Li Qianxue couldn't figure it out, but soon she saw Luo Cheng in person. When Su Qinghui entered the exhibition center, someone familiar came over to greet him. Not many people in Lin City knew that he and Li Qianxue had divorced, but there were also many people who laughed at him. Many people guessed the reason why he had divorced Li Qianxue. In the past year he had seen a lot of sour words, mocking words, and cold faces. However, his ability was there. In such a short period of time he had established Qinhui Company, and then worked hard to manage it for more than a year. Recently, he had even started to cooperate with the Li family. Those people seemed to have just realized that the wind wasn't blowing in the right direction. There were many more people looking for Su Qinghui than when they first arrived. In addition, some people didn't understand what had happened. They saw that Qinhui Company was still working with the Li family. They thought that the relationship between the two of them had recovered. President Li is over there. Not only did someone greet him, but someone also told him where Li Qianxue was. Thank you. Su Qinghui saw Li Qianxue as soon as he entered the venue. After all, a woman like Li Qianxue, who was both imposing and beautiful, was quite eye-catching in this venue. He took the register in his hand and headed in Li Qianxue's direction. Li Qianxue sat there and flipped through the register in her hand. This was a small auction. Although the auction items weren't as rich as Christie's, there were still some good things that weren't usually revealed. Li Qianxue wasn't very interested in the first few items. However, there was a small jade Buddha at the back. She thought it was pretty good. Her aunt, the grandaunt of the Li family, was celebrating her birthday next week. She had always believed in Buddhism, so it was just right to buy such a Buddha for her. There was also a set of jewelry at the back. She would bid for it and give it to Su Qingsang. She sensed that someone was sitting beside her, but she didn't notice until, Ms. Li. This was a form of address used by people in the business world other than business partners. She turned her head and saw Luo Cheng sitting next to her. Hello, Mr. Luo. You're welcome. Just call me Luo Cheng. Luo Cheng smiled. After all, we're of the same generation. There's no need to be so polite. Li Qianxue didn't respond to him. She calmly closed the booklet. Mr. Luo came to visit and gave me a very generous gift. May I know what Mr. Luo's intentions are? Ms. Li, you don't have to be so wary. It's just a small gift. Li Qianxue's expression didn't change. I know very well how difficult it is to find 100-year-old ginseng. If such a gift is called a small gift, then I really don't know what a big gift is. Ms. Li, if you have something to say, just say it. For old Master Luo's sake, I will definitely help if I can. Ms. Li, why do you insist that I have a request? Maybe I just want to ease my relationship with the Li family? Then there's no need. There's no such thing as easing your relationship with the Li family. Ms. Li, Qianxue. Su Qinghui's voice sounded. He was standing in front of Li Qianxue. What a coincidence. Li Qianxue's fingertips tightened on the booklet. She looked at Su Qinghui with an ugly expression. Is it a coincidence? For such a small auction, the people who came were all invited in. The number of places was limited, and the people who came were all well known in Lin City. Although, she glanced at Luo Cheng and didn't understand why he was here. However, Su Qinghui's appearance here was not a coincidence at all. It's quite a coincidence. As Su Qinghui spoke, he took a step forward and was about to sit down beside her. When he saw Luo Cheng, he seemed to have just discovered him. So it's President Luo. Do you have something to discuss with Qianxue? Luo Cheng looked at the intimacy between Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue and thought about what his son had said. No matter how he looked at it, the two of them didn't look like they were divorced. When he came back to his senses, he cleared his throat. Yes, there's a small matter that I need to discuss with President Li. In just a moment, the way he addressed him changed again. Su Qinghui acted as if he didn't notice and looked in the direction of the stage. Although it's very rude to say this, the auction is about to begin. President Luo, why don't you come back after the auction is over? Okay. With Su Qinghui here, he couldn't say anything even if he wanted to. Luo Cheng stood up and returned to his seat at the back to sit down. Li Qianxue glanced at Su Qinghui coldly. I don't know when you became my spokesperson. Of course not. Su Qinghui shook his head. I just feel that you don't seem to want to be polite with him here. She really didn't want to be polite with Luo Cheng. It was too exaggerated to give that century-old ginseng as a normal gift to old Master Li. She had no doubt that Luo Cheng had other intentions. But she didn't need Su Qinghui to help her out. I can solve it myself. Li Qianxue resisted the urge to get up. Su Qinghui, I don't need you to meddle. Okay. Just take it that I'm meddling. Su Qinghui didn't say much, but he didn't miss Luo Cheng's gaze just now. It was clear that a man was interested in a woman. Luo Cheng had feelings for Li Qianxue. He was suddenly sure of this. His mood inexplicably became very gloomy. However, Luo Cheng didn't have much interaction with Li Qianxue in the past. Why would he show such a gaze? What exactly happened here? Chapter 729. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue. The words that he was about to say turned into concern. Qianxue, Luo Cheng doesn't have good intentions. I have a feeling that he must have some ulterior motive. It made him feel that something was not right for them to come knocking on his door. How could Li Qianxue not know that Luo Cheng's motives were not pure? She didn't think she needed Su Qinghui to remind her. Su Qinghui, I'm not a 3-year-old. I don't need you to teach me how to do things, let alone how to look at people. Silence. Su Qinghui looked at her cold profile and said in a soft voice, I don't mean to teach you. I just care about you. Thank you. Li Qinxue reopened the register. But I don't need it. She didn't need Su Qinghui's care. The auction soon began. Li Qinxue didn't look at Su Qinghui. Although he wasn't very interested in the items on the stage, he focused all his attention on them. Finally, it was the Jade Buddha that she wanted to buy for Aunt Li. Although the Jade Buddha was from the modern era, the jade was not bad and the carving skills were good. The starting bid was not expensive either, starting at 1 million. Every time he added 100,000. Li Qinxue raised the sign after someone raised it once. The price of a modern Jade Buddha statue was not considered expensive. However, when Li Qinxue raised it for the 3rd time, Su Qinghui followed suit. Li Qinxue couldn't help but glance at him. After being married for so many years, she could almost tell what Su Qinghui was thinking. With her brows furrowed tightly, Li Qinxue raised her card again. At this time, the price of the Jade Buddha had already reached 1.8 million. This price is about right. However, as soon as Li Qinxue put down the sign, someone behind her directly offered 2 million yuan. The voice was a little familiar. Li Qinxue looked behind her. There weren't many people who came to participate today. She saw Luo Qing behind her at a glance. If this was what he liked, then she would give it to him. After all, she was just buying it as a gift. She could change it. She stopped raising her placard, but Su Qinghui raised it again. This time it was 2.3 million. Luo Qing immediately followed and bid 2.4 million. Without batting an eyelid, Su Qinghui made a bid of 2.6 million. Whispers could be heard in the hall. Many people saw the two of them fighting over a Jade Buddha statue that wasn't worth much, and they didn't know what was going on. Someone looked at the roster again, thinking that he had missed something. 2.8 million. Luo Qing also raised the price by 200,000. 3 million. When Su Qinghui raised the paddle again, Li Qinxue couldn't help but turn around to look at him. What are you doing? Don't you like it? I'll buy it and give it to you. Li Qinxue was so angry that she almost laughed. This man was really enough. Who needs you to send me off? Do you think I can't afford it? No. Su Qinghui shook his head. I just want to make you happy. Su Qinghui was about to raise his paddle when Li Qinxue grabbed his hand. Su Qinghui, that's enough. She only wanted to buy it as a gift. She didn't really like it that much. She didn't need him to send her off. Wait a moment. Su Qinghui avoided her hand and raised his card again. 3.6 million. Su Qinghui. Li Qinxue was speechless. What on earth was this man trying to do? Did he think that she would be touched by him doing this? Luo Qing, who was behind her, raised the price again. 3.8 million. When Su Qinghui raised his hand again, Li Qinxue pressed it back hard. That's enough. Don't bid anymore. I won't take it even if you bid. This wasn't what she wanted. Su Qinghui didn't raise his paddle again. He looked at Li Qinxue's enlarged face in front of him. There was a hint of anger in her eyes, as well as some emotions that he couldn't see clearly for a moment. He wasn't in a hurry to investigate. Instead, he glanced at Li Qinxue's hand that was on his hand. Unlike when she was tugging at his sleeve just now, Li Qinxue's entire hand was on the back of his hand. He could feel her soft and slender palm exerting force. He raised his head and met Li Qinxue's gaze. The distance between the two of them was very close, so close that Su Qinghui couldn't help but tilt his face slightly. Realizing that she had been taken advantage of, the anger in Li Qinxue's eyes became even more obvious. A flash of cunning flashed across Su Qinghui's face. Yes. Since Qinxue said that she won't let me buy it, then I won't buy it. It was just a Jade Buddha statue. If Li Qinxue liked it, he would find a better one for her next time. Su Qinghui, Li Qinxue gritted her teeth. This bastard, how dare he do such an outrageous thing to her in such a place and on such an occasion? Yes. Su Qinghui smiled and moved his face closer. Okay, I'll listen to you. Luo Qing, who was behind him, had already bought the Jade Buddha statue for 3.8 million yuan. There are still many treasures below. Qinxue, why don't you see what's good? I'll buy it if you say so. How about that? Su Qinghui didn't mean to flatter Li Qinxue at all. Li Qinxue came from a well-educated family and was extremely wealthy. She knew the value of collectibles and the trend of appreciation very well. Su Qinghui, just you wait. Li Qinxue wasn't as thick-skinned as him, and it was impossible for her to lose her temper in public. She could only let it go. Okay, I'll wait. Su Qinghui smiled and there was obvious joy in his eyes. Although it was just a touch, it was still a kiss, right? There was progress. Not bad. Continue to work hard. Next, another auction item was auctioned. Li Qianxue resisted the urge to leave. She retreated and stopped looking at Su Qinghui. Until the end of the auction, Li Qianxue didn't see anything else she wanted. She couldn't wait to stand up and leave as soon as the auction ended. However, she was blocked by someone at the exit. Luo Qing looked at Li Qianxue with a bright smile on his face. President Li, are you leaving? Yes. Li Qianxue nodded. She was indeed planning to leave. Since President Li is leaving, please take this with you. As he spoke, Luo Qing raised the box in his hand. Li Qianxue already knew what he was talking about and what was inside. President Luo, what do you mean? Nothing much. Since you like it, I bought it for you. It wasn't something valuable either. Just accept it for fun. Li Qianxue didn't take the box he handed over. She took a small step back. President Luo, I think you might have misunderstood. I don't like this jade Buddha that much. If President Luo needs any help from me or the Li Corporation, you can make an appointment with my secretary tomorrow morning. What do you think? President Li, don't misunderstand. I really don't mean anything else. I just saw that you seemed to like it, so I wanted to buy it for you. President Luo, you're too polite. I really don't need it. Thank you. Li Qianxue was about to leave after saying that. Luo Qing didn't give up. He took another step forward and blocked Li Qianxue's path. This action made Li Qianxue extremely unhappy. It had been a long time since anyone dared to do this. Before she could react, a hand suddenly appeared on her shoulder. Su Qinghui had arrived at some point and was standing beside her. His hand was holding her shoulder. Li Qianxue's body stiffened for a moment. She wanted to break free from his hand. However, Su Qinghui hugged her shoulder even tighter. Qianxue, didn't you say that you're going to eat Japanese food tonight? I've already booked the place. Let's go. When he spoke, his entire body was facing Li Qianxue. The distance between the two of them was very close. It gave people the feeling that he wanted to kiss her. Li Qianxue didn't expect him to dare to come again. Her expression was very ugly. From the corner of her eye, she saw the figures walking around. She didn't flare up on the spot. However, the gaze she looked at Su Qinghui could almost kill. Su Qinghui wasn't anxious when he saw the anger in her eyes. Instead, he turned to look at President Luo. What a coincidence, President Luo is here too. I'm sorry I didn't see you just now. It's okay. How could Luo Qing not see that Su Qinghui did it on purpose? He forced himself to calm down. President Su, I made an appointment with Qianxue to eat Japanese food together. By the way, President Luo, is there anything you need? If there's nothing else, then we'll take our leave first. Luo Qing knew that he had already lost the best opportunity today. He took a step back and looked at Su Qinghui with an unclear expression. It's nothing, President Su. Okay. Then we'll leave first. Su Qinghui held Li Qianxue's shoulder and walked out. Just as Li Qianxue was about to break free, he moved his face closer to her. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Or would you rather go back and pester him? It has nothing to do with you, Su Qinghui. Let go. My heart will ache. Su Qinghui led her all the way outside. That kind of person isn't worth your trouble. Tomorrow, I'll get someone to investigate what he's thinking. Li Qianxue was actually thinking about this problem. Luo Qing was fine, but he gave her ginseng and jade Buddha statues. What was he trying to do? While she was thinking seriously, she didn't notice that she had already been led away by Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui took her all the way to the place where he parked his car, opened the door and let her get in. All right. Since you can't figure it out, don't think about it. I believe that there will be a time when he reveals a flaw. That was true, but Li Qianxue didn't like this feeling. She had always liked to control everything in her own hands no matter what it was. I said, I'll get someone to investigate tomorrow. Find out what his purpose is. Don't worry too much. For the time being, I believe that he won't dare to do anything. Who was worried? Who was she? She was Li Qianxue. She wasn't worried. Li Qianxue was just about to refute when she realized that she was actually sitting in Su Qinghui's car. When did she get in? Let's go. A smile flashed across Su Qinghui's eyes. Let's go eat. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue glared at him. Who wants to eat with you? Didn't we just agree? To eat Japanese food? That's what you said, not what I said. Yes, I said it. Su Qinghui didn't deny it. But you didn't refuse. Alright, this shop is not bad. The boss's Japanese food is very authentic. I really made a reservation. Let's go. Li Qianxue looked at his side profile, who was focused on driving, and suddenly snorted. Su Qinghui, what are you doing? Do you think that if you do this, I will soften my heart and accept you? You think too little of me. No. I didn't mean that. There happened to be a red light ahead. Su Qinghui turned his face to look at her, his expression focused and serious. I just want to have a meal with you. I just think that the Japanese restaurant is good and want to invite you to try it. Of course he did have a purpose. First, he didn't have the chance to see Li Qianxue recently. He really wanted to be with her. Second, he wanted to appear in front of her from time to time and make his presence known in front of her. He would work hard to let her slowly get used to him and accept him again. The latter one was a long road ahead. However, the former one could be achieved first. It's just a meal, Qianxue. That Japanese restaurant is really good. Believe me. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. What else could she say now? She was already in Su Qinghui's car. However, she made a mental note of Su Qinghui. Half an hour later, Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui arrived at the Japanese restaurant he mentioned. It was a very Japanese-style storefront. Li Qianxue thought that Su Qinghui was just saying that he wanted to book a seat, but she didn't expect it to be true. They entered the private room and sat down on the tatami. The waiter in a kimono came over with the menu. He gestured for the two of them to order. Today's caviar is very fresh. Do you want one? Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue with a solicitous gaze. Their sashimi is also very good. You can try it. Li Qianxue didn't respond to him, but Su Qinghui wasn't annoyed. He ordered the meal according to her usual habits and preferences. During the whole process, Li Qianxue sat there without moving at all. After the waiter left, she finally looked at Su Qinghui. You said that Luo Qing was unaccountably solicitous, so he must have ulterior motives. What about you? Su Qinghui? Qianxue? He has ulterior motives? You're not much different. No, I don't have a motive. You don't have a motive? If you don't have a motive, you brought me here against my will? Is treating you to a meal considered a motive? Is letting you taste delicious food considered a motive? Otherwise, Li Qianxue was quite impolite. Su Qinghui, in my opinion, you're the same as Luo Qing. It's different. Su Qinghui shook his head. I'm more sincere than him. Unfortunately, I don't believe it. Qianxue, I know you won't believe me, but it doesn't matter. One day, I believe you will believe me. It didn't matter if you didn't believe it. Time would prove everything. Li Qianxue sat motionless. Her expression was quite cold, and her whole person revealed an aura that rejected him 1,000 miles away. Today's events were not within her expectations. Su Qinghui had kissed her and brought her here. She should be angry, and she had the right to be angry. But now she realized that apart from being angry, she did feel a trace of unspeakable gratitude towards him. After all, compared to Luo Qing, it was much easier to endure being with Su Qinghui. Of course she wouldn't be with Luo Qing. But just now she really didn't want to tolerate Luo Qing anymore. Chapter 730. The private room was very quiet. Li Qianxue sat there, her expression not very good. She realized something. What Su Qinghui had done today had hurt her. Regardless of whether it was the kiss that ended as soon as they touched, or the one that brought her here. Not only did she not resist, but she also followed Su Qinghui here. Li Qianxue, are you crazy? Have you really forgotten everything that happened to you? Have you really forgotten how you spent the past 20 years? How could you forget? How could you forget? What happened? Su Qinghui noticed that Li Qianxue didn't look too good. He picked up the teapot on the table and poured a cup of tea for her. Try the tea leaves here. They taste pretty good. Li Qianxue looked at the steaming hot tea in front of her. She stood up from the tatami and planned to leave. Qianxue? Su Qinghui didn't understand what was going on. He didn't understand why Li Qianxue's face suddenly changed. Li Qianxue's footsteps were a little fast. She naturally couldn't eat the Japanese food in front of her. Just as he pulled open the sliding door, the waiter just happened to make a gesture to pull the door. Behind this waiter were several other waiters with trays in their hands. Qianxue, if there's anything, let's eat first. Su Qinghui stood up and reached out to hold Li Qianxue's hand. Li Qianxue broke free from his hand and took a step to the side. It was also at this step that the door was opened. The waiters filed in and began to serve the dishes. The sashimi here is really good. You'll know once you taste it. I don't want to eat anymore. Compared to eating, Li Qianxue didn't want to see Su Qinghui. The waiter placed the food on the tray on the table and then left quietly. Su Qinghui took a step forward and blocked her way. Do you not want to eat, or do you not want to see me? I'm glad that you have such foresight. I really don't want to see you. Li Qinshua's voice was full of sarcasm. Hearing that, Su Qinghui didn't get angry. His expression didn't even change. Fine. If you don't want to see me, let's go eat. I'll take you home after dinner. Su Qinghui, do you not understand human language? I said I don't want to see you. I know. You don't have to see me when you go home after dinner. As Su Qinghui spoke, he took her hand and walked back to the tatami mat. Su Qinghui, regarding the City Star, I have some more ideas after coming back from this business trip. Since I'm free today, let's exchange some pointers. Li Qinshu stood still, and the expression on her face finally changed a little. What are you doing? Do you think I will be soft-hearted by this? I didn't say that. I just wanted to tell you what I think. Or do you not want to know? In the end, Li Qinshu was convinced by Su Qinghui. She sat down again. Su Qinghui didn't smile proudly because she stayed. He very attentively rearranged the tableware for Li Qinshu, then placed the chopsticks in front of Li Qinshu. Try it. It's really good. Li Qinshu looked at the chopsticks he handed over and finally took them. Didn't you say that City Star? Qinshu, even if you have something you want to know, you have to let me eat first, right? Su Qinghui smiled. I'm really hungry. After he said that, Li Qinshu didn't say anything else. She ate quietly. After the food entered her mouth, she realized that Su Qinghui's introduction was right. The fish fillets inside were indeed very tasty. The meal was very quiet. Li Qinshu forced herself to focus on the food instead of looking at Su Qinghui. After the meal, Su Qinghui didn't say anything about City Star. When Li Qinshu was about to lose her patience, Su Qinghui finally spoke. The first thing he said was, Qinshu, what stage do you want City Star to reach? How far could the City Star go? Li Qinshu might be willful or she might hate Su Qinghui, but she would never joke about work. She sat there without moving, waiting to hear Su Qinghui's new ideas. Time passed like this for half an hour. Li Qinshu originally wanted to leave, but now she completely calmed down. She looked at Su Qinghui and had to admit that this person was talented in his work. That's a good idea. Yes, I think it's good too. Su Qinghui nodded and looked at Li Qinshu. Then let's work hard together. Work hard together? Li Qinshu looked at Su Qinghui. In the end, she didn't refute his words. There was a sense of familiarity that she hadn't felt for a long time. It was as if she had returned to the past, when she and Su Qinghui worked hard together. At that time, even if there was no love, Li Qinshu retracted her thoughts and refused to think about it anymore. Some things were no longer the same. In the following period of time, Li Qinshu and Su Qinghui both became busy. Su Qinghui's Qinhui company's performance was booming. Speaking of which, it wasn't easy. Li Qinshu was much busier than him. The two of them were busy with their own things, but their communication didn't decrease. Su Qinghui would come to the Li Corporation to look for Li Qinshu when he had nothing to do and tell her about City Star. It wasn't just about City Star that the two of them had to discuss. Occasionally, when Li Qinshu encountered some business matters, Su Qinghui would also give his opinion. He had worked in the Li Corporation for such a long time that he had a detailed understanding of the Li Corporation, the employees below, and even the people who had dealings with the Li Corporation. Even if Li Qinshu didn't want to admit it, some of his ideas made him feel good. Under such circumstances, City Star was carried out in an orderly manner. Li Qinshu would occasionally go to the construction site to inspect it. It wasn't that the Li Corporation hadn't built larger buildings before. But this one was especially different. Li Qinshu didn't think about why it was different. She just wanted to do her best in this project. Su Qinghui closed the blueprint in his hand and looked away from the building in front of him. He put away the blueprint and was about to leave when footsteps followed behind him. President Su. Yes. Su Qinghui looked at the person who had come. It was his secretary Qiao Ran. President Su, I've already found out about the matter you asked me to investigate last time. What? It's about the Luo family. Qiao Ran didn't seem to understand why Su Qinghui didn't seem to remember. It wasn't that Su Qinghui didn't remember. It was just that in the past few days, he had finally managed to get Li Qinshu's attention through work. He was so happy that he naturally forgot about a small fry like Luo Qing. Yes, what's the situation? Tell me. Su Qinghui followed Qiao Ran to the direction of his car. Qiao Ran followed behind him and didn't stop reporting. Luo Qing and Luo Ming originally ran Star Luo department store together. Later, Luo Ming's wife offended President Hua, so in the past 2 years, President Hua bought Star Luo department store. The two brothers decided to use their connections to do something else, but Luo Ming and Luo Qing had a disagreement. Luo Ming thought that they should start running Star Luo department store again. After all, they still had their original foundation. But Luo Qing didn't agree. Su Qinghui suddenly knocked on his knee. Why didn't he agree? Although Luo Qing isn't famous, he still has some tricks up his sleeve. He loves to take risks and can be considered impulsive. Although he's old, he's even more hot-blooded. He thought that since Hu Jinyao didn't deal with them anymore, it was naturally a chance to show off and start over in Lin City. Yes, that's it? That simple? Yes, that's it, but I also asked about another situation. I think that's the reason why Luo Qing took over President Li. What? Luo Qing seems to have come up with a very good plan. He said that he wanted to compete with Luo Ming. I think he probably wants to see how far he can go without the Luo family, right? Qiao Ran didn't say the rest, but Su Qinghui understood what he meant. Are you trying to say that he wants Chenxue to invest in him? It's possible. After all, the Li family can be considered the largest investor in Lin City now. They were also the most confident investor. There was no big problem with what Qiao Ran said, so the rest of the situation made sense. However, Su Qinghui also believed in another thing. Other than business, Luo Qing was probably the same as him. He had some other thoughts about Li Chenxue. If he succeeded, then Luo Qing would get an investment. If he didn't succeed, then Luo Qing could use this opportunity to get close to Li Chenxue. No matter which one it was, he wouldn't lose out. Su Qinghui's expression didn't look too good. From the looks of it, he really had a good plan. President Su? Let's go. Let's go back first. Su Qinghui knew that he didn't have the right to stop Luo Qing's actions. But he was just unhappy. He was very unhappy. Luo Qing, President Su? Qiao Ran got into the car and found Su Qinghui in a daze. He called out to him with some concern. Su Qinghui came back to his senses and looked at the street outside the car window. Don't go back to the company. Go to the Li Corporation. Li Chenxue closed the documents in front of her and packed her things. Yang Rong's voice sounded outside, saying that Luo Qing had come to visit. It had been almost a week since Luo Qing bid for the jade and said that he would give it to her. Because Li Chenxue was busy with the company's matters, she really forgot how to get someone to investigate what difficulties Luo Qing had encountered. After thinking for a while, Li Chenxue still let him in. President Luo, what's the matter? Luo Qing entered the door with a very proper and sincere smile on his face. Can't I come to see you if I have nothing to do? He saw that Li Chenxue's expression wasn't very good, as if she couldn't accept such a joke. He raised his hand. All right, I do have something to talk to you about. Li Chenxue's expression relaxed a little. When Luo Qing gave her the generous gift, she had already guessed that Luo Qing should have a request. And now that he came looking for her directly, she heaved a sigh of relief. At least she didn't have to worry about guessing what he wanted to do. She asked the secretary to pour 2 cups of tea and glanced at Luo Qing. You don't mind drinking tea, right? Chapter 731. No, of course not. The secretary served tea and went out again. Li Chenxue looked at Luo Qing and said, All right, what's the matter? You can say it now. There is indeed something. Luo Qing looked at Li Chenxue and was not in a hurry to speak. Instead, he picked up the tea in front of him and took a sip. Li Chenxue was not in a hurry. She felt more at ease knowing that the other party had something to ask of her rather than nothing. Take a look at this first. Luo Qing took out a proposal and placed it on Li Chenxue's table. Li Chenxue picked it up but was not in a hurry to open it. This is our latest project. We need investors. Luo Qing spoke unhurriedly. In fact, they really needed investors. This project was the reason why he wanted to separate from Luo Ming and was unwilling to continue operating Luoxing Market. Li Chenxue was not surprised. The Li family had a transcendent status in Lin City. Every year, countless people would send all kinds of proposals or plans to the Li Corporation, hoping that the Li Corporation would be willing to invest in them. She flipped open the proposal book that Luo Qing had brought. The Li Group operated a wide range of projects. In addition to real estate, there were also e-commerce, electronic products, and investment companies. Li Chenxue was in charge of the Li Corporation's investment company. They will be responsible for picking out the profitable projects from the suitable ones. The proposal was very thick. It could be seen that the other party had done his homework. Li Chenxue put the proposal aside. If you don't mind, I'll give you an answer after I understand it. You can have a look first. I'll think about it. Luo Qing had a faint smile on his face. He was not afraid that Li Chenxue would reject the plan. Let's work together on official matters first. Then he would slowly dispel Li Chenxue's worries and let her slowly accept him. This was also one of his plans. Li Qianxue glanced at him and finally picked up the proposal to read. She was looking at the planning and Luo Qing was looking at her. Li Qianxue was beautiful. Back in Lin City, it was almost to the point where one family had a daughter. However, no one expected that Li Qianxue would find a poor boy in the end. The marriage of Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui had shocked everyone in Lin City. While Luo Qing was distracted, Li Qianxue had already finished reading the plan. She didn't look at it in detail. She just looked at it briefly. The data is well done and the analysis is on point. It looks like the prospects are pretty good. Luo Qing had a confident smile on his face. His looks were not outstanding and he had the typical aura of a businessman in his 40s. The shrewdness that occasionally showed in his eyes made Li Qianxue unhappy, but she would not deny the other party's plan. But, I don't have the final say in Guangyuan investment. I need to answer to the shareholders and the board of directors. So leave this proposal. I'll give you an answer in a week. Okay. Luo Qing nodded with a look of understanding. I'll wait for your good news. After talking about business, Luo Qing was not in a hurry to leave. It's almost time for dinner. Why don't we have a meal together? There's no need. I have something to do later. What a pity. I was thinking that if there was a chance, we could continue to communicate during dinner. As Luo Qing spoke, he stood up. There was a look of pity in his eyes. Looks like it can only be next time. Li Qianxue didn't respond. She couldn't guarantee when the next time would be. After all, to her, Luo Qing was no different from an ordinary investor. Then you go ahead with your work. I'll be leaving first. Although Luo Qing had a purpose, he was not in a hurry. He was patient. Li Qianxue stood up out of politeness. At this moment, the internal line sounded and Yang Rong's voice came. President Li, President Su is here. Su Qinghui? Li Qianxue was stunned for a moment. Thinking about how she had met Su Qinghui again and again because of the project, she wasn't surprised. Let him in. She didn't notice the slight change in Luo Qing's expression after she said this. When Su Qinghui came in, Luo Qing had already changed his face. He rushed from the construction site to the Li Corporation. When he passed by a flower shop, he suddenly had an idea and asked Xiao Ran to stop the car. Sir, are you buying roses for some special anniversary? Do you need our help writing a card? No. There's no need to write a card. Just wrap it up for me. Su Qinghui suddenly had the excitement of a little boy. I'll send it to her personally. Your wife is so happy. Oh. Su Qinghui shook his head and looked at the bouquet of roses. All he could think of was Li Qianxue's beautiful face. I'm even happier to be able to marry her. It was just that he didn't cherish such happiness in the past. But in the future he wouldn't. The way the flower shop assistant looked at him was different. After working in the flower shop for so long, Su Qinghui didn't look young. He still wanted to buy flowers for his wife instead of for a mistress. He was really a good man. Su Qinghui didn't know how good the shop assistant's imagination was. However, when he sat in the car and looked at the large bouquet of roses, he inexplicably began to look forward to Li Qianxue's expression when she saw the bouquet of flowers. Unexpectedly, Luo Qing hadn't left yet. President Luo is here too? What a coincidence. President Su. Luo Qing naturally didn't miss the roses in Su Qinghui's hand. President Su, are you here to talk about business? He roughly knew how Li Qianxue felt about Su Qinghui. He didn't think that Li Qianxue would accept Su Qinghui's actions. Su Qinghui didn't answer Luo Qing's question. President Luo, are you here for business too? Luo Qing finally looked a little embarrassed because of Su Qinghui's question. Yes, it's also business. Then didn't I come at a bad time? Are you guys done talking? Li Qianxue hadn't said anything. Only now did she say, we're done. Luo Qing had no reason to stay. He looked at the flowers in Su Qinghui's hand and felt a little unwilling. However, he also knew his own weight at this moment. Yes, we're done talking. Then President Li, I'll leave first. Please. Li Qianxue stood in her original position and didn't move. No matter how unwilling Luo Qing was, he still walked forward with every step he took. The office door closed. Su Qinghui walked in front of Li Qianxue with a bouquet of roses. This is for you. Li Qianxue stood still. Just now, Luo Qing was there, so she couldn't show any emotions towards the flowers in Su Qinghui's hand. What do you mean? Nothing. I just want to give you a bouquet of flowers. Su Qinghui, I don't think there's a need for any other communication between the two of us other than business. I just want to give you a bouquet of flowers. It has nothing to do with business or personal matters. Su Qinghui placed the bouquet of flowers in front of Li Qianxue. You don't have to be too nervous. I'm not nervous. I don't believe that I need to accept this bouquet of flowers from you. When Li Qianxue spoke, there was a hint of mockery on her face. Is this a sudden compensation? Or do you regret it? Qianxue. Su Qinghui took a step forward. He walked behind the desk and placed the bouquet of flowers in Li Qianxue's hand. I have indeed been regretting it. I have also been blaming myself for missing so much. There are many things that I didn't do well, and there are many things that I didn't do with you. I know that you won't give me a chance, and I know that you won't forgive me. You will think that I gave you flowers because I wanted to make it up to you, but what I did has nothing to do with regret or compensation. He let go of her hand, and Li Qianxue had no choice but to catch the bouquet of flowers. He looked into her eyes and his gaze was gentle. I just wanted to give you a bouquet of flowers, that's all. Qianxue, in my heart, you are like this bouquet of roses, gorgeous, charming, and irresistibly fascinating. Her temperament, her experience, and the mature scent on her body made her look like the embodiment of roses. It seemed normal for him to be moved by her. Li Qianxue casually placed the flowers on the desk beside her and did not respond to Su Qinghui's words. However, she was not angry either. She knew very well in her heart that Su Qinghui's words were just flowery words and completely untrustworthy. However, her heart still beat imperceptibly because of his words and the look in his eyes. That kind of emotional fluctuation was so subtle that she almost deliberately ignored it. Are you done? If you are, you can leave. I'm done, but I can't leave. For more than a week, Su Qinghui had worked hard to make Li Qianxue recognize his ability in business. He did not come to give her a bouquet of flowers and leave. I went to the construction site today and I found a few small problems. What problems? Sure enough, when it came to business, Li Qianxue could almost immediately get into the mood. Chen Pingyuan, the supervisor at the construction site. Did you let him in? Chen Pingyuan was the son of Li Qianxue's aunt. His ability was limited, but he could still do a job like supervisor. This person was arranged by Old Master Li. Old Master Li was old, and his children and grandchildren were not often by his side. When he had nothing to do, he would look for Old Master Li and his aunt. Li Qianxue became serious because of Su Qinghui's words. Yes, I asked him to go. What's wrong? What happened? I went to the construction site today. I stayed at the construction site for about an hour, but I didn't see Chen Pingyuan. Later, I asked again and they told me that Chen Pingyuan was often not at the construction site. Every day except for the morning I couldn't find him at all. Today, a batch of steel came and the other party couldn't even find someone to sign it. Li Qianxue's expression suddenly became serious. Is there such a thing? When she went to the construction site a few times before, Chen Pingyuan was always there. Yes. I also specially asked among the workers. They all told me that Chen Pingyuan was there every morning, but in the afternoon he often ran away and disappeared. Qianxue, it's true that the Li Corporation belongs to the Li family. It's reasonable for you to arrange for some people to come in, but for a project like City Star. If there's no suitable supervisor, if there's no one who will always be in charge, then how can City Star become the benchmark building of Lin City? Li Qianxue was silent. She had always dealt with matters and not people. Su Qinghui's words naturally made sense. I got it. I'll pay attention to this matter. And after that, Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue. He didn't believe that she didn't know the seriousness of this matter. Are you planning to just warn him? Or criticize him? Originally, Wang Tao had said that he would arrange for a supervisor, but because this project was led by the Li Corporation, Wang Tao naturally respected and trusted Li Qianxue very much, so some of the subsequent work arrangements were mainly made by the Li Corporation. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. Old Master Li valued family, and Chen Pingyuan was her aunt's son. With this premise, if she fired Chen Pingyuan, she was afraid that her father wouldn't be able to explain it. However, she wouldn't allow anyone to work with such a careless attitude under her nose. I know what to do. Don't worry, I know how to deal with it. Su Qinghui had nothing to worry about. Li Qianxue had always been cold-blooded. She dealt with matters and not people. No matter who introduced the employees who made mistakes under her, no matter what relationship they had, she wouldn't give face to them. Is there anything else? Yes. Su Qinghui looked at the time. It was almost time to get off work. I want to treat you to dinner. Sorry, I don't have time. Li Qianxue refused without thinking. I want to go home to accompany my father. Su Yusin and Su Qingsang weren't in Lin City. As a daughter, if she didn't accompany Old Master Li often, she was afraid that the old master would be even more lonely. That's good. I haven't played chess with Dad for a long time. Why don't we play together? I also want to ask Dad for advice. Who are you calling Dad? Li Qianxue glared at him. She looked very imposing, but Su Qinghui only thought that her blinking was so cute. I'm sorry, I'm used to it. It's hard to change it for a while. Li Qianxue didn't speak. In fact, if Su Qinghui changed to call Old Master Li, uncle or something like that, she would feel even more awkward. My dad doesn't have time for you. Don't look for him. As she spoke, she tidied up her desk. Su Qinghui saw the proposal in her hand. He thought for a moment and reached out to take it. Li Qianxue couldn't stop him in time. Su Qinghui, you're no longer a member of the Li Corporation. You don't seem to have the right to read the Li Corporation's documents, do you? This doesn't seem to be a document from the Li Corporation. Su Qinghui shook the proposal. Although it isn't, it's now in the Li Corporation and on my desk. That's it. Please put it down. Su Qinghui wasn't in a hurry to put it down. Instead, he opened it and flipped through it. This should be Luo Cheng's plan, right? Did he come to you to ask you to invest in him? Li Qianxue took the proposal back from his hand. Does it have anything to do with you? Of course. Su Qinghui nodded. After all, he doesn't seem to have good intentions. I have to identify for you what exactly his intentions are. Su Qinghui, don't treat me like a child. I have the ability to distinguish right from wrong. I also know what kind of plan can make money and what kind of plan can bring benefits to the group. Of course you know, but you don't know the evil side of men. I don't believe that you can't tell that Luo Cheng has ulterior motives. Chapter 732. Luo Cheng had ulterior motives but didn't Su Qinghui? Qianxue? If you want to prove that you don't have ulterior motives, you can leave now. Don't mention anything about going home with me to meet my dad and playing chess with him. Li Qianxue picked up her bag and was about to walk out. Su Qinghui stood in front of her. Qianxue, I just want to see Dad. After all, I haven't seen him for a long time. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue stopped in her tracks and glared at the man in front of her. That's not your father. Don't call me so intimately. She lifted her feet and left. Xiao Zhao was already waiting downstairs. She got in the car, ignoring Su Qinghui who had been following her. Su Qinghui looked at her back and shook his head helplessly. By the time Li Qianxue got home, she had already composed herself. The moment she entered the door, she turned around and looked outside. There was no sign of a car, nor did she hear any sound of a car. She retracted her gaze and her eyes regained their coldness. When Li Qianxue and Old Master Li sat down at the dining table, Uncle Zhang suddenly came in. Grandpa Sir is here. The only person Uncle Zhang would call Su Qinghui Sir was Su Qinghui. Old Master Li froze for a moment and looked at Li Qianxue in confusion. Li Qianxue's hand that was holding the chopsticks tightened slightly. She turned her face expressionlessly to look at Uncle Zhang. He didn't manage to spit out the words, so what if he's here? Old Master Li's attitude was much better than Li Qianxue's. Although he was no longer in charge, he knew a little bit about the basic matters of the group. He naturally knew that Su Qinghui had recently cooperated with the Li group. Let him in. After Su Qinghui entered the room, Old Master Li looked at him kindly. Qinghui, have you eaten? No. Su Qinghui glanced at Li Qianxue as he spoke. Li Qianxue sat there expressionlessly. She didn't even bat an eyelid. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue eagerly. Nanny Zhang took out a bowl and chopsticks and asked Su Qinghui to sit down and eat. Thank you, Auntie Zhang. Su Qinghui was quite polite. He had always been like this. He had always been polite to the people who worked in the Li family. You're too polite, sir. Nanny Zhang liked Su Qinghui very much. She took out a soup bowl and filled it for Su Qinghui before returning to the kitchen. Li Qianxue tightened her grip on her chopsticks. She had the urge to kick Su Qinghui out, but she resisted the urge. Old Master Li looked at Su Qinghui. What brings you here today? I haven't played chess with Dad for a long time. I happened to get a good chessboard from a friend, so I wanted to come and see you. Yes, all right. Li Qianxue nodded. Let's eat first. He asked Su Qinghui to eat, but he didn't remind Su Qinghui to change his words. Li Qianxue found it hard to breathe. Dad, eat. Old Master Li knew what she was going to say and glanced at her. Li Qianxue resisted the urge to smash the bowl and did not stand up to leave. Su Qinghui brought a jade cabinet with him. On the chessboard made of Hetian topaz, The warm black jade and the high-quality mutton fat jade had been carefully carved. Every chess piece had a very clear texture when held in the hand. My friend got this from a jade carving master. I know that you love to play chess, so I asked him to transfer it to me. Good. Not bad. Old Master Li loved to play chess and he did have good chess pieces. But this set of chess pieces did look good. The jade was good and the carving was good. Then let's play a game? The two sat down and began to play chess. Li Qianxue stood behind the two of them and watched Old Master Li and Su Qinghui follow them. She felt a burst of anger in her heart. She glared at the two of them, turned around and went upstairs without looking back. Su Qinghui picked up a white chess piece and put it on the chessboard. He looked at Li Qianxue's back from the corner of his eye, and his eyes were dark. Old Master Li put down a black chess piece. Although he was old, his eyes were very sharp. He saw Su Qinghui's eyes at a glance. Qinghui, how have you been? Li Qianxue returned to her room, still feeling annoyed. Lin City had entered the middle of summer. The weather was hot and the atmosphere was hot. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue constantly adjusted her breathing, trying to stop thinking about Su Qinghui's annoying smile. Half an hour later, Li Qianxue, who had taken a shower, had calmed down. She couldn't panic and she couldn't be affected by Su Qinghui's actions. She picked up the book she had placed on the bedside table, walked to the chaise longue and lay down to read. As for Su Qinghui, who cared about him? Once, we dreamed that we didn't know each other. When we woke up, we knew that we loved each other. Compared to this sentence, I prefer another one. Love, when you come over with a lit lamp of pain in your hand, I can see your face and I see you as happiness. The sudden voice behind her startled Li Qianxue, and the book in her hand almost fell to the ground. Su Qinghui quickly grabbed the book and looked at the cover. The English edition of Stray Birds. I remember I brought it back from England. Li Qianxue took the book from his hand, and her cold face had a hint of coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. I just took a random book. You don't need to interpret it too much. Su Qinghui stood beside the chaise longue and didn't speak. He looked at Li Qianxue with a faint smile on his face. How did you get in? Get out. This is my room. It used to be my room. Su Qinghui wasn't affected by her cold face at all. I sent Dad upstairs and told him that I was going back. Dad asked me to come over and say hello to you. No need. Li Qianxue realized that when she was downstairs, Su Qinghui must have said something to Old Master Li. Su Qinghui, don't think that you can bribe my father with a chess piece. Let me tell you, even if you bribe my father, it's useless. I won't forgive you. No matter who says it, I won't forgive you. Qianxue. Su Qinghui suddenly put a hand on the back of the chaise longue. He bent down and looked at her. You're very nervous. Nervous? What's there to be nervous about? Do I need to be nervous? It was ridiculous. Since you're not nervous, then I don't mind telling you. I have no intention of bribing Dad at all. I just know that he likes to play chess, so I gave him a chess piece. Su Qinghui's words were gentle. At his age, he had the steadiness and calmness that a young man didn't have. His eyes and his tone let Li Qianxue know that what he said was true. He really didn't need to please Old Master Li. Old Master Li wasn't someone who was easy to please. But the more this was the case, the more uncomfortable she felt. Turning away, she forced herself not to believe every word he said. Qianxue. Su Qinghui looked at the collection of stray birds that she was hugging tightly in her arms. He pulled the book back with a gentle gaze. I've said it before. I don't expect your forgiveness anymore. Putting the book aside, he placed his other hand by her side. This way she was trapped between his body and the chair. You can never forgive me. This is your choice. I can also choose to love you for the rest of my life, whether you forgive me in the end or not, whether you give me a chance or not. Qianxue, loving you is my choice. Wanting to be by your side is my wish. All of this is just my own subjective will. It has nothing to do with you. So you don't have to be nervous. His hot breath brushed against her face. She was already so familiar with the aura that was deep in her bones. At this moment, she was completely surrounded. At this moment, Li Qianxue thought that she had returned to that afternoon many years ago. The young man who was confident and confident stood at the front desk of the conference room and spoke of his ideas. Her heart skipped a beat. The moment she heard her own heartbeat, Li Qianxue suddenly reached out her hand and pushed him hard. Have you said enough? If you have, I'll ask you to leave. The resistance on her face was even more obvious than before. Su Qinghui knew that he couldn't force her, and he wasn't in a hurry to make progress in one day. I'm leaving. Qianxue, remember to rest well. If you're not here, I can naturally rest well. Li Qianxue believed that with her status, she had reached the point of being very calm about everything. But every time she faced Su Qinghui, she would always lose her composure. This feeling wasn't good at all. As if to prove her words, Li Qianxue stood up and planned to walk towards the bed. Su Qinghui's body hadn't completely retreated. As soon as she stood up, she bumped into him. Su Qinghui took a step back and she took a step forward. In order to prevent her from falling, he could only choose to hold her waist. This way, Li Qianxue's entire body was in his arms. He lowered his head and looked at Li Qianxue's beautiful face. After showering, her entire body was filled with the smell of rose-scented shower gel. She was only wearing a bathrobe and her collar was slightly open. Looking at the scene at the collar, Su Qinghui's eyes darkened a little. "Where are you looking?" Li Qianxue raised her head angrily. Su Qinghui retracted his gaze and looked at her red lips that were slightly open because of her anger. Suddenly he couldn't help but tilt his head and kiss her lips. Li Qianxue was shocked by his sudden action. She even forgot how to react for a moment. It was very soft. Su Qinghui remembered the kiss that stopped after a brief touch. But the memory wasn't as deep as it was in front of him. He exerted a little force and pressed forward a little. It was really soft and slightly sweet. He suddenly couldn't stop. The hand on his waist began to exert force, and he pressed her body into his arms. He tilted his head and deepened the contact. This kiss made him addicted. He couldn't help but want more, much more. Li Qianxue suddenly raised her hand and pushed him away forcefully. She took a big step back, gritted her teeth, and glared at Su Qinghui with fierce eyes. "Su Qinghui, that's enough. What kind of person did he think she was? Not enough. Get out." Su Qinghui looked at her deeply. "Okay." Li Qianxue thought that he was going to leave, but Su Qinghui took another step forward. He tilted his head and kissed her on the cheek. "I'm leaving. Good night, Qianxue." He turned around and left, his footsteps slightly faster. Li Qianxue couldn't flare up even if she wanted to. She stood there, feeling even angrier. While she was angry, her mind couldn't help but flash back to the deep kiss just now. Her body was full of Su Qinghui's scent and the influence he left behind. Li Qianxue's expression was ugly. That night she couldn't help but lose sleep again. Li Qianxue looked at Qin Pingyuan in front of her with a gloomy expression. She was now at the construction site of City Star. She came in the afternoon, and as expected, she didn't see Qin Pingyuan. She even deliberately waited until it was almost time to get off work, but she didn't see Qin Pingyuan. Li Qianxue's anger grew as she waited longer and longer. When Yang Rong informed Qin Pingyuan to come to the construction site, she waited for nearly an hour. Li Qianxue's expression was already extremely ugly. "Supervisor Qin." Li Qianxue didn't even bother to call his name. "Can you explain to me where you have been all afternoon? What did you do?" Qin Pingyuan didn't expect to be caught red-handed by Li Qianxue, and his expression didn't look good. "Qianxue, look, please call me President Li." Li Qianxue didn't give him any face. Qin Pingyuan's father was a little embarrassed. "I can explain this. I did have something to do in the afternoon, so I didn't make it in time. Don't worry, I usually work hard to watch here. It's fine." Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She just stared at his face so intently that Qin Pingyuan himself avoided her gaze. Li Qianxue didn't intend to waste time with him. She turned around and looked at Yang Rong. "Inform the finance department to pay him tomorrow." "Qianxue, you can't do this, Qianxue." Qin Pingyuan called out a few times, but Li Qianxue didn't intend to look at him anymore. She turned around and walked to the back. Qin Pingyuan tried to chase after her, but he was blocked by Yang Rong and Xiao Zhao. "Li Qianxue, you cold-blooded woman. We're relatives. Do you have to be so ruthless?" "Li Qianxue, I don't believe that you can find a better supervisor." "Li Qianxue," there were waves of clamors behind her, but Li Qianxue pretended not to hear them. She walked on the construction site where the foundation had already been built. Her expression was calm. "If you believe me, I have a good recommendation." The sudden voice made Li Qianxue turn her face. When she saw Su Qinghui standing in front of her, she was no longer surprised. "Did you come here to see the result?" "No. I'm here to help you." Su Qinghui said a name. This person was also in the Li Corporation before. He only left for a period of time because of family matters. "If you believe me, he will definitely be able to do it." "Because of family matters?" Li Qianxue looked at him expressionlessly. "Didn't he leave because he wanted to follow you?" "Qianxue, do you think that when I left, Manager Lin and the others left because of me? Isn't that so?" "Qianxue, I'm not as despicable as you think. Su Qinghui seemed to be a little helpless. Those people were just used to doing things with him. But the person he was talking about today was indeed competent. You really can think about it? Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue suddenly became serious. Can you stay away from me? Don't approach her, don't provoke her, stay away from her, stay away. Chapter 733. Li Qianxue hated the feeling of things getting out of control. She liked to have everything in her hands. Su Qinghui's recent actions were far beyond her control. The golden crow sank to the west, and the night breeze blew gently. Li Qianxue didn't tie her hair up when she came out today. A few strands of hair flew forward from the back. Su Qinghui didn't respond to her. He raised his hand and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. Are you tired? You seem to have waited for a long time. Are you hungry? Want to have dinner together? Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue waved his hand away. I said, can you stay away from me? Su Qinghui's hand was in the air and he gently put it down. He looked at her and said very seriously. I can't. My place is all yours. Su Qinghui pressed the position of his heart. It told me that if I stay away from you, it will die. Then you can go to hell. Li Qianxue was so angry that she blurted out without thinking. Su Qinghui's face darkened. At that moment the air was dead silent. Su Qinghui stood there as if he had fallen into darkness. After Li Qianxue said that, she fell silent. The air suddenly fell silent. The two of them stood in the night wind without saying a word. Li Qianxue looked down. Her watery eyes were misty, and no one could tell what she was thinking. Su Qinghui stood in front of him. He slowly lowered his hand, which had been in the air, and then clenched it into a fist. The phone rang and broke the silence. Li Qianxue answered the phone very quickly. Yusin? When Li Qianxue picked up the phone, she glanced at Su Qinghui, then turned around and walked to the other side. You're back? Didn't you say you had something to do at school? Why don't you let little Ian pick you up? Really, why didn't you tell me in advance? Although Li Qianxue's tone was filled with complaint, it was not difficult to hear the gentleness in it. Su Qinghui was standing not far from her. He felt complicated as he watched Li Qianxue talk to Su Yusin in such a gentle tone. He didn't know when Qianxue would speak to him in such a gentle voice. How much longer did he have to wait? All right. Mommy will be right back. Li Qianxue hung up the phone and walked toward the parking lot. Su Qinghui followed behind her. Yusin is back? Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue gently. Yes. Su Qinghui looked at her profile and suddenly said, Qianxue, I won't die. Li Qianxue's footsteps paused for a moment, but she immediately picked up her pace as if nothing had happened. She walked even faster than before. I still want to stay with you whether you need it or not. I want to be with you forever. So I won't die. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue, who had already walked to the front of the car. At least before I see your true happiness, I won't die easily. What he hoped the most was that he was the one who brought her happiness. Li Qianxue, whose hand was already on the car door, suddenly turned to look at him because of his words. She narrowed her eyes and looked at him coldly. Su Qinghui, you brought all my misfortune to me. You really don't have the right to say that. Last night, Li Qianxue was happy because Su Yusin had gone home, so she chatted with him until it was too late. When she woke up in the morning, she accidentally overslept. When she went downstairs, she saw Su Qinghui and Su Yusin sitting in the living room playing chess. Old Master Li was sitting by the side watching the game. Li Qianxue got up early in the morning. Her happy mood because her son had returned home inexplicably disappeared at this time. She glanced at the three men and finally forced herself to turn in the direction of the dining room. During breakfast, the irritation in Li Qianxue's heart did not disappear. Instead, it became stronger. She wouldn't have such emotions before. In the past year, no matter how many times Su Qinghui appeared in front of her, she could be calm. But now, something seemed to be different. In the past, she didn't stop Su Qinghui from approaching the children, nor did she stop Su Yusin from approaching the two children. It didn't make sense for her to cut off the relationship between father and son now, did she? Such a thing went against her nature. She couldn't do it. But her heart was indeed very upset. Li Qianxue sat at the dining table, her brows tightly knitted. Su Qinghui, is it so hard to get you out of my life? I really don't believe it. When Li Qianxue returned to the living room, Su Qinghui and Su Yusin had just finished a game. Su Qinghui was putting the chess pieces into the box. Old Master Li looked at his grandson. Yusin, have you been busy for more than half a year? I feel that your chess skills have regressed. It's not that I have regressed. It's that Dad has improved. Su Yusin put away the chess pieces with a faint smile on his face. Yusin may be too busy. Su Qinghui found an excuse for Su Yusin. He has to be busy with his studies. How can he have time to learn how to play chess? Yes, after all, not everyone is like you. You don't do your business and do other things every day. Li Qianxue couldn't bear to see Su Qinghui talk about Su Yusin, so she couldn't help but speak up. Su Qinghui put the last chess piece back into the chess box. He looked up at Li Qianxue. For me, getting you back is the most important thing. This sudden confession made Su Yusin and Old Master Li silent. The two of them couldn't help but look in Li Qianxue's direction. Li Qianxue was so stunned by Su Qinghui's words that she didn't know how to respond. Seeing the way her son looked at her, she spoke without thinking. Yusin, it's good that you're back. I'll take you into the company tomorrow. For the next few days you can help me look after the company. Mom? Now that you're back, I'll have time to see your sister. Besides, I also want to follow Nian Yan and the others. Qianxue. Old Master Li looked at Li Qianxue disapprovingly. Li Qianxue didn't want to stay any longer. She went straight in the direction of the door. Su Yusin got up and wanted to chase after her. Su Qinghui pressed his shoulder, shook his head at him and took the lead to follow. Li Qianxue's footsteps were very fast and anxious. Su Qinghui's steps were bigger than hers. When she reached the garden, he blocked her way. Qianxue? Qianxue. Get out of the way. The last thing Li Qianxue wanted to see now was Su Qinghui's face. I won't let you. Su Qinghui blocked her and didn't let her go any further. If you're unhappy with me, you can come at me. Why are you coming at Yusin? How did I come at Yusin? You're leaving just because he's back? What do you want Yusin to think? Who caused me to leave? Wasn't it you? Qianxue, be reasonable. You said that you wouldn't stop me from being close to the child. Yusin is my son. He's back, so it's normal for me to come to see him. Yes, it's normal, so you can go see him. I don't object. Li Qianxue took a step back, her eyes cold. You father and son have a good time seeing each other. I'll leave. Isn't that what you want? Qianxue, don't be like this. Su Qinghui didn't understand what Li Qianxue was angry about. You wouldn't vent your anger on me in the past. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? Didn't I learn from you? Li Qianxue actually knew that what she was doing was wrong. However, she saw Su Qinghui and Su Yusin sitting together playing chess, and Old Master Li watching from the side. At that moment, she actually had a feeling that nothing had changed and everything was still the same as before. She actually had a feeling that she and Su Qinghui had never divorced. She was still his wife and he was her husband. The Li family was still the same as before and Su Qinghui was still the same as before. Everything was the same. She hated this feeling very much, so she didn't even think about it and said sarcastically, "Besides, didn't I learn from you? You hate me for forcing you to get married, so you took my child away. Aren't you also venting your anger on me? What right do you have to say that about me?" The morning sun shone on the two of them, but the atmosphere suddenly became silent, just like yesterday. Su Qinghui's face turned deathly pale because of Li Qianxue's words. He stood there and even the sun couldn't make his face shine. Li Qianxue suddenly fell silent. She had finished speaking and fought back, but she didn't feel happy. She used to think that she was willing to use this method to attack Su Qinghui. She had been in so much pain, so she wanted to make him suffer even more. But she had clearly decided not to be that kind of person and she wouldn't do that kind of thing. But why did she become like this now? Her heart was aching. Her heart felt as if it was being held by a hand, suffocating and suppressing. She couldn't stay any longer, so she raised her feet and was about to leave. However, Su Qinghui suddenly grabbed her hand at this moment. Qianxue. Su Qinghui's grip on her wrist was a little tight, and she couldn't break free. She could only choose to turn her face away and not look at Su Qinghui. I know I did what I did. I made a mistake. No matter what I did or said, you won't forgive me. I also know that you don't want to see me. His heart ached as if it was being pierced by a needle. Qianxue, you hate me, you won't forgive me, you don't want to see me. You hate me, you refuse to forgive me, you don't want to see me, it's all fine. But please don't vent your anger on me. Because I've vented my anger on you before, I know that venting your anger won't make people happier. For so many years, the pain of her nightmares, the regret when she was awake, and the conflict that she couldn't tell anyone. He knew all those emotions, so he didn't want her to be like him. Qianxue, if you really don't want to see me, I can meet Yusin outside. You don't have to go. I'll go. As he spoke, he let go of his hand bit by bit. He looked at Li Qianxue. She stood there expressionlessly, still not looking at him. He smiled bitterly. Some things really couldn't be wrong. He turned around and left. His footsteps were extremely slow. Li Qianxue stood still and didn't even turn her head to look at him, until Su Qinghui's figure disappeared into the garden. Since Su Qinghui didn't appear, Li Qianxue naturally didn't need to go to Su Qingsang's place in Rong City to avoid him. Li Qianxue was happy that her son was back, but she still had to do what she had to do. She brought Su Yusin to the company for an internship and handed some important matters to Su Yusin to deal with. She also let him know about some of the big projects that the company was currently working on. Among them was City Star. This design is very good. Su Yusin looked at the construction site in front of him that was making good progress, and there was some admiration in his eyes. Our team is still very impressive to be able to come up with such a plan. Li Qianshua's expression instantly became a little subtle. This plan was made by Su Qinghui. Mom, who designed this? I want to meet him. Su Yusin was the person who was going to take over the company in the future. He needed to understand some of the company's main talents. If I have the chance, I still want to go to the construction site to take a look. Li Qianshua's expression became even more subtle. Under Su Yusin's somewhat puzzled gaze, she pulled the document back from his hand. This plan was made by your father. Huh? After Li Qianxue said that, she didn't want to say anything else. Su Yusin looked at her expression carefully. So it's my father? But Dad and you with the company? Alright, that's all for today. If you want to go to the construction site, you can go in the afternoon. Li Qianxue didn't want to mention Su Qinghui anymore. Ever since she said those words in the garden that day and angered Su Qinghui away, she hadn't seen Su Qinghui again. In the past few days, not only did Su Qinghui not appear, but Luo Qing also stopped looking for him. She didn't know where Wei Ting had gone. Her world suddenly became very quiet. It was so quiet that she almost couldn't help but wonder if such silence had anything to do with Su Qinghui. I have an appointment with a friend in the afternoon. After I have dinner with my friend, I'll go to the construction site to take a look at it in the evening. What's there to see at night? Li Qianxue looked at Su Yusin with a disapproving expression. Just go and see it during the day. No, you can see it more clearly at night. Su Yusin stood up as he spoke. Alright, Mom, you go ahead with your work. I'll go by myself after I see my friend. You. Li Qianxue had no choice. Remember to drive slowly. Don't drive fast. Got it? Su Yusin left. After he left, Li Qianxue wasn't in the mood to deal with the company. Su Qinghui's face flashed in her mind. Had he really decided not to appear again? That was all he could insist on. Fortunately, she didn't let down her guard. Li Qianxue convinced herself. After Li Qianxue went home for dinner that night, it started to rain outside. She looked at the time. At this time, Su Yusin should have finished his party with his friends. It was raining outside. Li Qianxue decided to call him and ask him to go home directly. There was no need to go to the construction site in such a heavy rain. The construction site could be seen at any time. There was no hurry. Unexpectedly, Li Qianxue called Su Yusin's phone, but no one answered. After that, she called several times, but no one answered. Suddenly, she couldn't sit still anymore. Qianxue? What's wrong? Old Master Li, who was also in the living room, was playing chess. Seeing his daughter's restless appearance, he couldn't help but ask. Nothing. Li Qianxue shook her head. She looked at the time and sat up. Dad, I'm going out for a while. You should rest later. Chapter 734. Li Qianxue still felt worried. He wanted to find Su Yusin in person. She didn't want him to really go to the construction site. Especially in this kind of weather, it was really not reassuring. It's raining so late. Where are you going? I'm going out for a while. Li Qianxue didn't want old Master Li to worry. She suddenly remembered that the weather forecast said that there would be a typhoon tonight. He could only blame the weather for being nice during the day, but it turned out like this at night. When she got in the car, she called Su Yusin again, but there was still no answer. Li Qianxue knew some of Su Yusin's classmates. However, it was not clear which classmates Su Yusin had gone out with tonight. She had no choice but to call a few of Su Yusin's classmates that she knew. But he still hadn't seen Su Yusin. Helpless, Li Qianxue asked Xiao Zhao to drive the car to the construction site. He felt a little regretful. She shouldn't be in a hurry to let Su Yusin take over the Li Group's affairs, although that would be Su Yusin's business sooner or later. What she regretted even more was her irresponsibility. The Li Group was now her responsibility. How could she let Su Yusin manage the Li Group just because Su Qinghui's appearance made her feel unsafe? This was not appropriate at all. She knew very well that this had nothing to do with Su Qinghui. but she couldn't help but vent her anger on him. The rain outside the car window was very heavy, and her heart became more and more anxious. It would be fine if Su Yusin was fine, but what if something happened to him? Li Qianxue didn't dare to think about it. She didn't dare to think about it at all. Both of them had been brought into this world by her hard work. Every one of her children was her treasure. She couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to any of the children. Forcing herself to throw those bad things out of her mind, the Li family was about an hour's drive away from City Star. It was still raining and the car couldn't go fast. Li Qianxue was even more anxious. "Drive faster," Li Qianxue instructed Xiao Zhao. Xiao Zhao glanced at her from the rearview mirror. He wanted to say that the rain was heavy and it was not suitable to drive fast, but how could Li Qianxue listen to him? He had no choice but to speed up. Unexpectedly, the night was not dark and there were not many cars on the road. Although Little Zhao was Little Zhao, he was also an experienced driver. He had just slowed down the car at the turn in front, but he didn't know that there was a yellow light at the other end of the turn. There was a car on the other side of the road that wanted to break through, and it happened to hit their car. Before Xiao Zhao could react, another car in front of them was disrupted by the sudden accident, and the car crashed into them again. The two cars collided together. No matter how good Little Zhao's driving skills were, he couldn't help but panic. He turned the steering wheel to the other side as fast as he could, but the road was too slippery because of the rain. The car slid out and hit the guardrail on the side. At the same time, the car behind crashed into them and the car in front. It was chaos. When Su Qinghui received the news and rushed to the hospital, he felt as if someone had grabbed his heart. He had difficulty breathing and rushed into the hospital, but he didn't have any more reason. Every time he caught a person he would ask where Li Qianxue was. His car was parked outside in the parking lot, and there was an open space in the middle. He rushed in directly. His hair was still wet but he didn't care at all. He finally rushed in the direction of the operating room. When he saw the light in the operating room, Su Qinghui's legs went soft. "Qianxue? Qianxue?" There was no sign of Li Qianxue in the corridor. He was the first to receive the news. Now the corridor was empty and he had no idea what was going on. He took out his phone and wanted to make a call. Su Yusin received the news and came over. For the time being, no one had informed old Master Li. Su Yusin looked at Su Qinghui, his face full of anxiety. "Dad, how is Mom?" "I don't know." Su Qinghui's whole body revealed a great sense of powerlessness. He leaned against the wall dejectedly. His whole body was like an eggplant that had been hit by frost. How could such a thing happen? Su Yusin looked at the light in the operating room. When he received the call, he was about to go home after a party with his friends. He didn't answer Li Qianxue's call because he left his phone in the car. However, he didn't expect Li Qianxue to run out to look for him because she was worried about him. For a moment, Su Yusin's expression was quite ugly. Su Qinghui curled up there. He didn't know what he was thinking. He only knew that he was very wrong now, very bad. He suddenly walked in front of Su Yusin and looked at him with a serious face. "Your mother will be fine, right?" Su Yusin had never seen Su Qinghui like this. He didn't know the situation and he didn't know how to answer. "You say Qianxue will be fine, right? She will be fine, right?" He asked 3 times in a row, and each time his tone was a little more intense than before. Su Yusin looked at him like this and couldn't say anything. He could only shake his head hard. "Yes, she will be fine." He still had so many things he hadn't done for her. He hadn't accompanied her as she slowly grew old. He hadn't let her know his true feelings. How could something happen to her? No, definitely not. The lights in the operating room were still on. Su Qinghui's heart had been hanging in the air, floating in the air, unable to land. Until a cell phone rang. Su Yusin quickly took out his cell phone and found that it was Li Qianxue's number calling him. He quickly picked it up. "Mom? Are you okay?" Li Qianxue's voice was very soft and weak. "I'm fine." "Yusin, where are you? Haven't you gone home yet?" "I'm in the hospital." "Mom, where are you?" "I'm in the hospital too." Su Qinghui and Su Yusin looked at each other. A minute later, the father and son rushed downstairs together. Downstairs, Li Qianxue was sitting in a wheelchair. Her hand was in a cast and she was downstairs outside the operating room. Su Qinghui and Su Yusin rushed over in a hurry. Especially Su Qinghui. When he heard that there was a car accident, he thought it was Li Qianxue. He rushed upstairs to the operating room. However, Li Qianxue was downstairs outside the operating room. The one in the operating room was not her, but Xiao Zhao. The car was hit. Because of Xiao Zhao, he tried to make the side where Li Qianxue was sitting face a safer and emptier direction. However, when the front and back of the car were hit, he was not so lucky. He was seriously injured and was still being resuscitated. As for Li Qianxue, because of Xiao Zhao's timely reaction, her hand was hit on the car door. Her foot was caught. Her foot was only sprained and bruised. However, because of the reaction force, her hand was fractured. Therefore, her left hand was in a heavy cast, and because of the bruise on her foot, she could only sit in a wheelchair. Su Qinghui couldn't see the cast on her body, nor could he see her sitting in a wheelchair. He quickly rushed over and hugged Li Qianxue. He hugged her very hard, very tightly, as if he wanted to rub her into his body. Qianxue, Qianxue. The huge sense of fear made Su Qinghui's voice tremble. He had never thought that he might lose Li Qianxue one day. He had always thought that he would have many opportunities and a lot of time. Qianxue, it's great that you're okay. He suddenly let go of his hand and took a step back. He looked Li Qianxue up and down. Are you okay? What happened to your hand? I'm fine. Li Qianxue was hurt by Su Qinghui just now. If she hadn't moved her hand quickly, she would have been in pain. How can you be fine? How can you be fine? Your hand is like this. And your foot? How is your foot? Is it serious? Did you hurt your bones? He asked a lot of questions in one breath. Su Yusin, who came with him, didn't have a chance to speak. Has the doctor arranged a ward? Did he say how long he will stay in the hospital? Su Qinghui seemed to have thought of something. He turned around and looked at Su Yusin. Yusin, hurry up and finish the procedures. Su Yusin looked at Li Qianxue worriedly. After confirming that her life was indeed not in danger, he turned around and went to finish the procedures. Li Qianxue sat in the wheelchair and looked at the fear in Su Qinghui's eyes. This was the first time she had seen this emotion in Su Qinghui's eyes. She seemed to look at him in confusion. Was he afraid? Qianxue. Su Qinghui checked Li Qianxue up and down. She looked a little disheveled. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were stained with blood. Her feet were bandaged and her hands were still in a cast. She really couldn't be more disheveled. Where else are you hurt? Where else does it hurt? Tell me? Where's the doctor? Did the doctor just leave you here and leave you alone? Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue glanced at him and interrupted him. Can you not speak for a while? In fact, she was also scared. She didn't see the car behind her when it crashed, but she saw the car in front of her and Xiao Zhao's car hit the railing. Even if the wind and rain were heavy, she could definitely see it at such a close distance. She still hadn't recovered from her shock. Okay, I won't speak. Su Yusin stopped talking, but his heart didn't relax. He was very afraid, very afraid. He reached out, avoided Li Qianxue's injured hand and held her in his arms. He was more restrained than before, but he was still very tight. Li Qianxue's brows furrowed slightly. She wanted to push him away, but one of her hands was injured. Her right hand was not injured. She raised it but then put it down. She didn't move and he didn't stop either. He just let her hug him. The corridor was very quiet. Su Qinghui's heart had been hanging in the air until now. With her soft body in his arms and the slight warmth, he felt that his heart finally relaxed a little. Qianxue, Qianxue. Qianxue. He buried his face in her neck. It's great that you're fine. It was really great. Li Qianxue wanted him to get up, but she looked at the top of her head in front of her and didn't say anything. Su Qinghui hugged her for a while and suddenly raised his head. Is that Xiao Zhao inside? Yes. Li Qianxue nodded gently and looked at the operating theater that was still lit. She didn't know how Xiao Zhao was doing. You're still injured. Su Qinghui saw that Su Qinghui was already coming over. He looked at the time. You should rest first. No need. She wanted to wait here for the results to see if Xiao Zhao was okay. Qianxue. Her stubbornness sometimes really gave him a headache. Don't be noisy. I want to wait here. If she hadn't suddenly wanted to go out, Xiao Zhao wouldn't have. Okay. Su Qinghui knew that he couldn't persuade her, so he hugged her tighter. Wait, I'll wait with you. Li Qianxue didn't let him push her away. When Su Yusin came back, she asked Su Yusin to go home, but Su Yusin refused. In the end, the three of them waited together. The surgery went on for a few hours. Finally, the doctor came out and said that Xiao Zhao's life was out of danger. In the future he would have to rest well. Li Qianxue finally heaved a sigh of relief and was relieved. Xiao Zhao was transferred to the intensive care unit, while Li Qianxue was forced back to the ward by Su Qinghui to let her rest. She was indeed tired. Previously, she thought that something had happened to Su Yusin, so she was already worried. She didn't expect that she would have to do something like this again. She was indeed tired now. However, before she could react, Su Qinghui had already picked her up and placed her on the hospital bed. Then he covered her with the blanket. "Sleep. I'll watch over you," he said. Li Qianxue glanced at him and finally turned her face away. She looked at the rain that was still falling outside the window and closed her eyes in silence. When Li Qianxue woke up, the room was a little dark. She didn't know where she put her phone after making that call. She wanted to reach for her phone to check the time, but someone had already held her hand. "Qianxue? You're awake? How do you feel now?" Li Qianxue used the light bulb outside to suddenly see the situation in front of her clearly. "You didn't leave? I told you I'll stay with you. I'll always stay with you." Su Qinghui didn't say anything else, but both of them could understand what he was saying. Li Qianxue looked at him and seemed to be inadvertently asking, "Where's Yusin?" "He stayed with you for half the night. I asked him to go back first. I'll ask Auntie Zhang to make some soup for you later." After a moment of silence, Li Qianxue thought for a moment. "How's Xiao Zhao? Is he okay?" "He's fine. He woke up once before. I went to see him. Don't worry." Su Qinghui held her uninjured right hand and said very seriously, "Qianxue, your injury isn't light either. Don't worry about others for now. Have a good rest first." Li Qianxue withdrew her hand and shifted her gaze to the side. She didn't look at Su Qinghui. "Su Qinghui, you don't have to do this." "Qianxue?" Su Qinghui held her hand and looked into her eyes very seriously. "I don't have to do what? Are you trying to say that I don't have to stay with you? Or do you mean that I don't have to accompany you?" "Qianxue, don't say any more. I won't listen to you." He lowered his head and planted a kiss on the back of her hand. Su Qinghui, who had been cold for almost half his life, could no longer be as indifferent as before. "Qianxue, you don't know how scared I was last night. You also don't know how worried I was last night. So I won't leave. I want to stay with you and watch over you. Qianxue, I can't be without you." Li Qianxue felt the warmth on her hand and saw the sincerity in his eyes. Chapter 735. Li Qianxue didn't sleep for long. She was a person who couldn't sleep when she had something on her mind. Not to mention that she was injured now and had a cast on her hand. If she was still a little confused when she first woke up, she was basically awake now. She was clearly awake, and she knew that the most important thing she should do at this moment was to pull back her hand and slap Su Qinghui to get out. However, at this moment she actually didn't do anything. All she could think of was the fear when the car was hit by the guardrail. She almost thought that she would die. The only thing she could think of was the fear that the doctor said that she was fine. He just bandaged her and put a cast on her so that she could rest. Before she could escape from that fear, he appeared. He hugged her tightly, warmed her, and let her know that she wasn't alone. In the past 20 years, Li Qianxue hadn't looked forward to this day every day. She hadn't thought about it every day, hoping that Su Qinghui would respond to her and give her a shoulder when she was tired. But he hadn't. However, she didn't expect that this year, more than a year after their divorce, Su Qinghui would hug her tightly and warm her with his chest. "Does your hand hurt?" She didn't respond. Su Qinghui was a little worried. "Does your hand hurt? Do you want to call the doctor?" Su Qinghui seemed to think of something and frowned. "Hungry? I asked Yusin to go home and ask Auntie Zhang to cook. Might be a little far. Wait a while. The food in the hospital isn't delicious." Li Qianxue didn't respond again. She looked at Su Qinghui, who was like a person in a dream, and felt that it was extremely unreal and unreal. "Qianxue?" Li Qianxue seemed to suddenly react. She turned her face and looked out the window at the still gloomy sky. "There are nurses in the hospital. Since Yusin will come later, there's nothing for you to do here. You can go." "Are you chasing me away?" Su Qinghui didn't expect Li Qianxue to turn against him as soon as she woke up. "Yes, I'm chasing you away." Li Qianxue's voice was cold. "I seem to have said before that I don't want to see you." He purposely lowered his voice and spoke in a cold tone. And she could easily put on a cold face. She rejected Su Qinghui. She didn't want the man who had made her dream and woke up from it. She turned around to look at the back view outside the window, aloof and cold. Her entire person gave off a feeling of being 1,000 miles away. There was silence behind her. Li Qianxue thought that Su Qinghui had left. However, she felt the bed move, and then her body was gently embraced by someone. Su Qinghui hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her neck. His hands encircled her waist. "Qianxue." His voice was husky and magnetic. His hot breath was on her neck and she couldn't help but shrink her neck. "I'm not leaving. I will stay and take care of you until you recover." He looked at her porcelain-like neck and tilted his head. His warm lips landed on it. Li Qianxue was clearly not a little girl, but because of his kiss she felt her entire body stiffen and tremble. After you recover, I won't leave either. I won't leave even if you drive me away. I want to watch you. I want you to be in front of me at all times. I want to keep an eye on you. Otherwise I won't be at ease. Qianxue. At my age I don't care about face anymore. I don't care about what else I will lose. But I'm afraid of losing you. Do you know? Li Qianxue didn't dare to move at all. Her body was very stiff. She even felt weak all over and her limbs felt like jelly. Just because of a hug and a kiss from him. It's done. Su Qinghui finally let go of her, held her waist and let her lie down. He then took a pillow from the side and placed it on her back. You rest for a while. I'll go get water. Su Qinghui got up and went to get water. He soon returned, took a towel, put the warm water in and came out to wipe Li Qianxue's face. His movements were very gentle, as if he was wiping some treasure. Li Qianxue watched his movements. This time she didn't ask him to leave. She wanted to tell him to get lost and say that there was a nurse, but those words had already been said. She turned her face and forced herself not to care, not to look and not to care. However, there seemed to be a warm current in her heart that slowly poured into the depths of her heart. When Su Yusin entered the door, he felt that his parents' state seemed to be a little strange. He stopped and looked at the two people in the ward. After waiting for a while, he went in and put down the lunchbox in his hand. Auntie Zhang and Old Master Li were downstairs and would come up soon. He didn't intend to let Old Master Li know, but such a big thing couldn't be hidden at all. Mom, are you okay? Li Qianxue withdrew her gaze. When she saw Su Yusin, her face relaxed a little. Yusin, you're here? As she spoke, she glared at Su Qinghui with a fierce gaze. Su Qinghui's hand was originally on Li Qianxue, but he still stood by the bed and didn't intend to leave. Yes. Su Yusin thought for a moment and decided to tell Li Qianxue. Grandpa is downstairs. He's here too. Why are you so insensible? Li Qianxue suddenly became anxious. Grandpa is so old. How can you let him run around? He'll find out sooner or later. Su Yusin put the lunchbox on the bedside table. It's not just Grandpa. I also know. I'm booking a plane ticket and rushing here. What? Li Qianxue really couldn't sit still this time. She sat up straight. The movement was so big that it even tore the wound on her arm. How can you tell your sister? The two children were still so young now. Was Su Qingsang going to bring the children to Lin City? How could she rest assured if she didn't bring them to Lin City? I said it. He'll find out sooner or later. As Su Qinghui spoke, he opened the lunchbox. Don't you think about it? Mom has to video chat with sister every day. How can we hide it? Then I can say that I went on a business trip. Mom, stop it. No matter where you go every day you have to call and video chat with us. Have you forgotten? Li Qianxue was silent. Su Qinghui pressed her shoulder at the right time. Okay, the children are just concerned about you. I don't want you to say it. Of course I know. Li Qianxue glared at Su Qinghui. Her face looked fierce but her voice was very soft. Su Qinghui smiled with a gentle expression. Su Yusin looked at the way the two of them interacted and put the soup in front of Li Qianxue. Mom, drink some soup first. Breakfast is still in Nanny Zhang's hands. She should be up soon. Li Qianxue was just about to reach out to take it when Su Qinghui reached out at the right time and put the bowl of soup in his hand. Let me do it. He sat down by the bed and took the spoon to feed Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue's lips were pursed into a straight line. Your hand is injured. It's not convenient. My right hand is not injured. That's not convenient either. Su Qinghui scooped the soup and put it to Li Qianxue's lips. Open your mouth. Li Qianxue looked at the patience in Su Qinghui's eyes. After a few seconds of stalemate, she finally opened her mouth. There was a faint smile in Su Qinghui's eyes, as if feeding her soup could make him happy. He was at the most charming time for a man. He didn't have the immaturity of those young and handsome men. He also lacked the shrewdness that a man in his 30s had. He was mature and steady, exuding an elegant temperament. And the way he looked at her was gentle and affectionate. Li Qianxue's heart skipped a beat again. She was like a little girl who had her first awakening of love. Her heart was beating fast. Her face inexplicably felt a little hot. Qianxue, are you okay? Old Master Li's energetic voice came from outside the door. Li Qianxue was about to speak. Old Master Li had already rushed into the ward. Qianxue? Dad, I'm fine. Li Qianxue tried to smile. Look at me. Aren't I fine? Your hands and feet are broken. How can you call that fine? Old Master Li had heard that she had been in a car accident early in the morning. Only now did he see his daughter's appearance. Her hands were cast and her feet were bandaged. Old Master Li's face was a little ugly. How could you get into a car accident? Where's Xiao Zhao? How is he? Xiao Zhao hasn't woken up yet. Li Qianxue had asked about Xiao Zhao's situation just now. The doctor said that the anesthesia hasn't worn off yet. He might wake up later. It's good that he's fine. Old Master Li's eyes were full of worry. If there's another situation like yesterday, you're not allowed to go out again. Dad, I know. Li Qianxue was also worried yesterday. The father and daughter were talking happily, and Su Qinghui didn't leave. He placed the breakfast that Nanny Zhang brought out and walked to Li Qianxue. Come, have breakfast. I'll do it myself. I'll do it. Su Qinghui was very stubborn and Li Qianxue felt embarrassed. But he didn't give her a chance to refuse. After all, her left hand was still in a cast. Old Master Li was worried about Li Qianxue just now, so he didn't pay much attention to others. Only now did he realize that Su Qinghui was here. Qinghui? Why are you here? After all, it seemed that Su Qinghui hadn't been to the Li family for a while. He had thought, Dad. Su Qinghui didn't stop moving his hands. I heard that Qianxue had a car accident yesterday, so I came over. Li Qianxue was a little embarrassed. She wanted Su Qinghui to let her eat by herself. However, Su Qinghui was very domineering. Your hand is injured. I'll feed you. Old Master Li looked at Su Qinghui and then at Li Qianxue. Dad, don't mind me. Qianxue's hand is injured, so it's not convenient. Su Qinghui said it casually, but it was this casual tone that made Old Master Li and the others feel that the relationship between the two had broken through. Dad. Li Qianxue knew what Old Master Li meant as soon as she saw his expression. She wanted to explain, but Su Qinghui fed her an egg. She had to swallow the egg in her mouth, so naturally she couldn't speak. Dad, I'll take care of Qianxue here. You guys can go back first. Su Qinghui glanced at Su Yusin as he spoke. Yusin, go to work at the company. Your mother should have taught you. You have to work hard. Got it? Then I'll leave first. Su Yusin wanted to stay. However, in this situation she would definitely be a third wheel if she stayed. Mom, I'm leaving. Yusin. Li Qianxue wanted to stop him, but Su Yusin waved his hand, took the car key and left. Since you're fine, I'll go see Xiao Zhao. Old Master Li also turned around. I asked Auntie Zhang to prepare a bowl of soup for him. I'll bring it to him now. Dad? Li Qianxue wanted to speak, but Old Master Li also left. Suddenly, only Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui were left in the ward. She glared at Su Qinghui, almost glaring a hole in his face. Don't be angry. Su Qinghui looked at her. Don't you think that Dad and Yusin are very understanding? I don't think so. Li Qianxue looked at him coldly. Su Qinghui, you're really good. He had won his son and father over to his side and had both of them help him. Wasn't that really good? Qianxue. Su Qinghui put the bowl in his hand aside. I'd rather I was really good. In that case you would give me a little more chance. Don't even think about it. Li Qianxue was furious. I won't give you a chance. And it's okay. Su Qinghui didn't refute. As long as I can accompany you, I'll be very happy. Sweet words. Sweet words are only used on you. Li Qianxue felt that her teeth were a little sore. Stop, use your sweet words on other women. I only want to say them to you. Li Qianxue felt that her teeth were starting to ache. Stop talking. I want to sleep. She didn't sleep well last night. She needed to sleep for a while. Okay, you go to sleep. I'll accompany you. Who wants you to accompany me? Li Qianxue was stubborn. In the end, she didn't chase Su Qinghui out. Su Qinghui held the back of her waist and let her sleep. Seeing that her breathing gradually stabilized, he got up and went outside to make a phone call to explain some work matters. The Qianhui group had just been established, so Su Qinghui was actually very busy. However, no matter how busy he was, he had to put Li Qianxue first. After talking to Qiao Ran for a long time, he arranged some of the main work and told him that he didn't have time recently. After hanging up the phone, Su Qinghui seemed to have thought of something. He made a few more phone calls. He thought that Li Qianxue wouldn't wake up so soon, so he waited for everything to be arranged before returning to the ward. Unexpectedly, Li Qianxue wasn't the only one in the ward. Wei Ting was also standing by the bed. Seeing that it was him, Su Qinghui's face suddenly darkened. Wei Ting didn't come empty-handed. It was a coincidence. He happened to have something to look for Li Qianxue today. Unexpectedly, when he went to Li Qianxue's company, Li Qianxue didn't come. Not only did she not come, but Li Qianxue's secretary also told him that Li Qianxue had a car accident and wouldn't come to the company for a while. How could Wei Ting sit still now? He quickly rushed to the hospital. Before coming to the hospital, he didn't forget to buy a large bouquet of roses and some high-end nutrition products suitable for the patient. Wei Ting didn't turn around when he felt Su Qinghui's footsteps coming in behind him. He even deliberately told Li Qianxue, his face full of concern. "Qianxue, how's your hand? Does it hurt?" Li Qianxue didn't feel any pain just now, but now that she saw the two men crowded in this ward, she really felt the pain. Chapter 736. The atmosphere in the ward was a little strange. Li Qianxue's hand was injured. When Wei Ting brought the roses in, she couldn't reach out to take them. After all, Wei Ting had always been exaggerated. Every time he sent flowers, he would send a large bouquet of roses. Wei Ting was still holding a large bouquet of roses in his hand. His body was half bent, obviously wanting Li Qianxue to take the flowers. Li Qianxue didn't have the ability to take such a large bouquet of flowers with one hand. Just as she didn't know how to refuse, Su Qinghui came in. As soon as Su Qinghui came in, he saw the large bouquet of roses. He narrowed his eyes, but his expression didn't change. He calmly stepped forward and walked to Wei Ting's side. Taking the bouquet of flowers from his hand, Su Qinghui casually placed the flowers on the bedside table. However, he found that there were fruits and cups on it. He turned around and casually placed the flowers on the coffee table in the ward. Then he walked to the other side of the bed and stood beside Li Qianxue. One of his hands didn't forget to place on Li Qianxue's shoulder. Only then did he look at Wei Ting. "President Wei is very considerate. Thank you for coming to see Qianxue." Wei Ting's expression wasn't good. From the moment he saw Su Qinghui to when he took the roses from her hand, his expression was ugly. "President Su is also very considerate. I just don't know why Qianxue is injured. Naturally, I have to take care of her." Su Qinghui smiled faintly. He looked at the unhappy expression on Wei Ting's face, and his expression immediately eased. Ever since Wei Ting was rejected by Li Qianxue last time, he had been very depressed. Other than being depressed, there was nothing he could do. After all, Li Qianxue wasn't a young girl who had just come out of society, nor was she an impulsive love brain. She was calm, rational, and mature. She had her own set of rules. If he accidentally stepped on her line, she would definitely not give him the slightest chance. This was also why he stubbornly appeared, even though he knew that if he didn't appear for a period of time, Li Qianxue would completely forget about him. However, he didn't expect that he only wanted Li Qianxue to calm down for a few days and give her a buffer period. He was also thinking of ways to get close to Li Qianxue, but Su Qinghui had already beaten him to it. "President Su, are you taking advantage of me? Taking advantage of others?" Su Qinghui smiled. "What does it have to do with you?" As he spoke, he placed his hands on Li Qianxue's shoulders to assert his dominance. "You?" Wei Ting gritted his teeth and turned to look at Li Qianxue. "Qianxue?" His voice was full of grievance, but Li Qianxue only felt a headache. She really didn't have any more thoughts about Wei Ting. At most, she thought of this man as a little brother. After all, she was an only child and had no other siblings. "Wei Ting, thank you for coming to see me. I'll look for you when I'm free. Is that okay?" Li Qianxue clearly felt the hand on her shoulder tighten a little. "Su Qinghui, that's enough." "Qianxue?" Wei Ting didn't want to. "I don't want to go. I want to stay and take care of you." "Wei Ting, stop messing around." She had asked Su Qinghui to stay partly because she was impulsive. However, Wei Ting also stayed behind. What was going on? "I'm not messing around." Wei Ting was arguing with Su Qinghui. "Why can he stay and take care of you? Why can't I? I don't care. I want to stay and take care of you." "President Wei, you seem to have misunderstood something." Su Qinghui had already let go. He wrapped his arms around Li Qianxue's shoulders. "Qianxue is my wife and the mother of my child. It's my duty to take care of her. What's your identity?" "What's my identity? I'm Qianxue's suitor. As for you, you and Qianxue are divorced." "What? Do you still think you can tie Qianxue up?" "Stop dreaming. Qianxue told me that she won't get back together with you. It's useless for you to act obedient here." "Whether I act obedient or not has nothing to do with you, President Wei. As for whether Qianxue will get back together with me, that's not important. What's important is that she has already promised me today to stay and take care of her." He tilted his head to the side and looked at Li Qianxue affectionately. "Qianxue, don't you think so?" Li Qianxue looked at him and saw that he had made Wei Ting's face turn green. However, she didn't want to give him face. Just as she wanted to refute, the door of the ward opened again. This time the person who came in was old Master Li. He had already gone to see Xiao Zhao and hired 2 nurses to take care of Xiao Zhao. He also asked someone to keep an eye on Xiao Zhao. Once he woke up, he had to inform him in time. The old master was very concerned about the people who worked in the Li family. After he finished explaining everything, Xiao Zhao's family also rushed over. Xiao Zhao worked in Lin City and his family was in another city. Old Master Li said a few more words to Xiao Zhao's wife before coming over. He didn't expect to see a young man the moment he arrived. He took a look and felt that this young man looked a little familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. "Dad, you haven't gone back yet?" Li Qianxue thought that old Master Li had already gone home. She didn't expect that he hadn't. "I didn't go back." Old Master Li shook his head. "I went to see Xiao Zhao and was about to go back." "Hello, uncle." When Wei Ting heard that he was Li Qianxue's father, he immediately stood up straight. "I'm Wei Ting. I'm here to see Qianxue. By the way, I'm Qianxue's suitor." As soon as he said this, Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue's expressions changed at the same time. Old Master Li was already old, but his eyes were still sharp. Because of Wei Ting's words, he sized him up from head to toe. "You're Wei Ting?" "Yes." "I remember you. You've worked with our Li Corporation before, right?" "Yes. We've been working together since last year." Wei Ting didn't expect the old master to remember him and even take the initiative to talk to him. His spirit suddenly changed. Old Master Li nodded and didn't go along with Wei Ting's words. "Are you pursuing Qianxue?" "Yes." Wei Ting's answer was especially loud. "Hey young man, do you really know what you're doing? After all, Qianxue, uncle, in my heart Qianxue is perfect and impeccable. She's the most perfect woman. I know what I'm doing. I don't care if she has children, if she's divorced, and I don't care if she's a grandmother or not." Old Master Li hadn't finished speaking yet. Wei Ting had only said so much. There was no need to say the rest of his words. Waving his hand, old Master Li looked at him and couldn't help but laugh. "You've thought about everything." "Of course, I have to think about everything." Old Master Li nodded, looked at Wei Ting, then looked at Su Qinghui and finally waved his hand. "All right then, since you're so determined. I'll test you too. Come with me." "Ah." Wei Ting pointed at his nose. "Me? What? Don't you want to marry my daughter? Don't you dare to accept my test?" "Of course not." Wei Ting suddenly became energetic. He stood even straighter than before. "Uncle, just tell me what your test is. Let's go." As old Master Li spoke, he had already started to walk outside. Before leaving, he didn't forget to say goodbye to Li Qianxue and said that he would go home first. After all, there were nurses and Su Qinghui here. He wouldn't be of much use even if he stayed. Wei Ting took a step behind him and suddenly turned around. He ignored Su Qinghui's gloomy expression and Li Qianxue's stunned reaction. He reached out and pinched Li Qianxue's hand, his face full of anticipation and excitement. Qianxue, did you hear that? Your father has approved of me." "Ah. Don't worry, I will definitely pass your father's test." Li Qianxue's lips moved. Before she could say anything, Wei Ting let go of her hand. "Qianxue, wait for me. I will definitely pass the test." After saying this, he gave Su Qinghui a provocative look, then hurriedly left the ward and followed old Master Li. The ward became quiet again. Su Qinghui's expression was very ugly. Li Qianxue was also confused by this sudden turn of events. What was the old master doing? What kind of test was this? Seriously, when did she say that she wanted to develop a relationship with Wei Ting? His body was suddenly turned around by Li Qianxue. He looked at her with an extremely serious expression. "Li Qianxue, you don't really want to give Wei Ting a chance, do you?" "Why not?" Su Qinghui looked at the provocation that flashed across her face. He lowered his head and kissed her lips with precision. Li Qianxue's eyes widened as if she couldn't believe Su Qinghui's actions. He didn't stop kissing her. He placed one hand on the back of her waist and the other on the back of her head. He turned her entire body around and deepened the kiss. Every time he kissed Li Qianxue, his heart would be greatly shaken. That kind of compatibility, that kind of satisfaction. He regretted it more than once. He must have been a fool for the past 20 years. Otherwise, how could he ignore such sweet lips and such a beautiful and charming wife? The more he thought about it, the more anxious he couldn't help but become. His kiss also became more and more passionate. After Li Qinshua's initial surprise, she couldn't push the person in front of her away. One of her hands was injured, and the other hand was tightly trapped because Su Qinghui was holding her. She was injured and couldn't use much strength. She couldn't push Su Qinghui away, so she could only let him kiss her. At first she was a little resistant, but later she found that she slowly relaxed. Her body weakly snuggled into his arms and let him kiss her. No matter how many years it had been, it was always like this. In his arms she wasn't the strong woman in the business world. Nor was she the calm and self-restrained Li Qianxue. Her gentleness made Su Qinghui more and more irresistible. If it weren't for the fact that she was injured, he wouldn't have doubted that he would have gone further. But it was good now. He still knew what it meant to stop. Qianxue, Qianxue. He stopped the kiss, but he didn't let go of her. He hugged her with a gentle and irresistible force. I know I'm not qualified, but I really hope that you won't give other men a chance. You can call me selfish or you can call me a scumbag, but this is my hope. I hope that you're mine. Just mine. I also hope that if possible you will give this chance to me. I will prove that I can do it too. Before he could finish his sentence, Li Qianxue suddenly pushed him away gently. She turned her face sideways and her lips were still a little delicate. She stared straight at Su Qinghui's face. Su Qinghui, what if I'm with another man? Su Qinghui was suddenly stunned. Who are you to me? We're already divorced. You have nothing to do with me, so why should I listen to you? What does your hope have to do with me? You have the right to take it back and I have the freedom to refuse. I allowed you to appear here not because I forgave you, but because I don't have the energy right now. So, if I really decide to give Wei Ting a chance or even be with him, what will you do? Her series of questions made Su Qinghui almost speechless. He just stared at Li Qianxue. Su Qinghui, what will you do then? Su Qinghui was silent. He looked at Li Qianxue with a slightly pale face. He wanted to tell her not to, but he wanted to say that he could actually do it well. He had a lot to say, but at this moment he couldn't say a single word. Li Qianxue gave other men a chance? Li Qianxue was with other men? He couldn't accept the thought of this. But he knew that what Li Qianxue said was right. He had no right to object. They were already divorced. Qianxue? You can go. Not long after Li Qianxue lay down, she was woken up by Wei Ting. She hadn't rested much yet. I'm going to sleep. She didn't borrow Su Qinghui's strength and carefully moved down. She avoided the injuries on her hands and feet and slowly lay down. Just as she was about to close her eyes, she heard Su Qinghui's unstable breathing and a voice that sounded even deeper than before. If you really want to be with another man, I don't know what will happen. However, I will still protect you and watch you. I will always be with you and witness your happiness with my own eyes. Li Qianxue didn't move. Her eyes rolled, but she didn't open them. Even though that will make me extremely painful. As long as you're happy, it's fine. She felt her hand being held by someone. She resisted the urge to open her eyes and look at Su Qinghui. She felt his lips on the back of her hand. Qianxue, I hope you're happy, and I also hope that your happiness is given by me. If it really doesn't work, I can only bless you. Qianxue, I only hope that you won't make a decision in a hurry. No matter what, you're still injured. Let me take care of you. After saying that, he stood up in a hurry, not caring about Li Qianxue's reaction. He turned around and walked out with the hot water bottle. I'll go get some water. He couldn't even listen to her subsequent words of rejection. Su Qinghui thought that he was really becoming more and more useless. Li Qianxue opened her eyes after he left. She looked at his back as he left and the ward that was immediately closed. Her expression was unclear. On this day, Li Qianxue's ward could be considered lively. At first it was Wei Ting, then it was Yang Rong. There were also a few higher-ups of the company. When they heard that Li Qianxue had a car accident, they all came to see her. Soon the ward was filled with all kinds of gifts. When Auntie Zhang delivered the food, Su Qinghui asked her to pack up everything. He picked up the food and began to feed Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue took a nap in the afternoon, but more people came later. She didn't rest much. Although her injury wasn't serious, it was still very exhausting. She was really hungry now. After taking a deep look at Su Qinghui, she didn't refuse the food he fed her. She ate very slowly, and Su Qinghui's feeding wasn't fast either. After the morning, Su Qinghui was even more proficient in doing these things. After the meal, there was a nurse to clean up the dishes. Su Qinghui only needed to accompany Li Qianxue. He casually took a few bites and put down the bowl. Wei Ting hadn't returned and he felt a great sense of crisis. Previously, Su Yusin had come over after work. He wanted to stay, but he rushed Su Yusin home. He wanted Su Yusin to find out old Master Li's intentions. He shouldn't be so worried about personal gains and losses, but his opponent was Wei Ting. Wei Ting was younger and more energetic than him. More importantly, Wei Ting was stronger than him in one way. He had never hurt Li Qianxue. He really didn't have the slightest confidence against Wei Ting. But he couldn't show it even if he was very anxious. He felt that the situation in front of him was clearly very good, but because of this sudden change, Su Qinghui fell into a state of anxiety. After cleaning up the dishes, he saw that Li Qianxue didn't seem to be in high spirits. He went to the small kitchen attached to the ward to wash the fruit, cut it, and brought it to the bed. "Eat some fruit. What do you want to eat?" Li Qianxue didn't say anything. He used a toothpick to pick up a piece of apple. "Apple." Seeing that she didn't respond, he fed her another red grape. "Try it. I tasted it just now. It's very sweet." "Qianxue?" He looked at her and waited for her to open her mouth. Looking at Su Qinghui, Li Qianxue still opened her mouth and bit the red grape. It was a very simple matter, but Su Qinghui smiled. "Qianxue, it's indeed very sweet, isn't it? Yusin bought it. The older he gets, the more sensible he is." Li Qianxue didn't know that there were too many people coming today. Everyone brought gifts when they entered the door, so she didn't notice. However, because Su Qinghui said that Su Yusin bought it, she ate a few more. That couldn't be better for Su Qinghui. He became more and more interested. After feeding her the grapes, he fed her a few cherries. He didn't stop until Li Qianxue said that he couldn't eat any more. The fawning expression on his face was too obvious. Li Qianxue couldn't bear to look at it. It was getting late. The nurse poked her head in and wanted to ask if she needed help. Seeing the two of them like this, the nurse shrank her head out again. Su Qinghui took this opportunity to get some water and wash Li Qianxue up. "I know you like to be clean. It's impossible for you to take a bath, but I can help you wipe it." After he finished speaking, he unscrewed the towel and was about to do it. His hand holding the towel stopped when he met Li Qianxue's bright eyes. Only then did he realize that something seemed to be wrong. If he wiped Li Qianxue's body, wouldn't he have to help her take off her clothes and then? Just imagining that scene, Su Qinghui suddenly felt a little hot. His hand holding the towel tightened a little and he even swallowed unconsciously. Chapter 737. Call Xiaoli in. Li Qianxue felt her teeth clench. Her eyes flashed and she had no intention of letting him do it. Xiaoli was the nurse who had poked her head in just now. She was in her early 30s. However, she was experienced. There were 2 nurses in each ward. Xiao Zhao was on the other side and Li Qianxue was on the other side. Li Qianxue did feel uncomfortable. She had always liked to be clean, and she had never experienced such a situation before. Su Qinghui looked into her eyes. Not only did he not call Xiaoli, but he also walked to the door of the ward and locked it. "Su Qinghui, there's no need to call Xiaoli. I'll help you." As Su Qinghui spoke, he returned to the bed. He looked at Li Qianxue and reached out his hand to her. "Su Qinghui, how dare you?" Li Qianxue was a little embarrassed, but she was more angry. It wasn't that she had never met Su Qinghui openly, but it was never when she was sober. After so many years, if she still had some enthusiasm, it would have become cold by now. However, she didn't expect that one day, Su Qinghui would take a hot towel and say that he wanted to wipe her body. Su Qinghui looked at her face that was flushed with anger. He knew that if he continued, she would be even angrier. However, when he thought that Wei Ting might be trying to curry favor with old Master Li now, he couldn't sit still. If he couldn't count on old Master Li, then he could only take down the main character. He put the towel back into the water and walked in front of Li Qianxue. He bent down and placed his slender and well-defined fingers on the button of her hospital gown. Su Qinghui, Li Qianxue had one hand in a cast. As soon as she raised her other hand, she was suppressed by Su Qinghui. She could only watch helplessly as he began to take off her hospital gown. It was not the right way to persuade her. He only undid her clothes. The weather was very hot, and she was wearing nothing under the hospital gown. She didn't feel it before, but now her face was full of embarrassment. Su Qinghui didn't think too much about it. He took off her clothes and wrung the towel over again. When Li Qianxue reached out to block it, he began to wipe her body. Li Qianxue was the darling of the heavens. Her skin was delicate and fair. Even at this age, her body was still flawless. He started at her shoulders and worked his way down. When his hand touched her heart, Li Qianxue couldn't help but stop him with her uninjured hand. However, she had forgotten that she was lying down and not sitting at the moment. As soon as her hand touched Su Qinghui's, she didn't pull his hand away. Instead, it seemed that she was inviting him to touch her. She quickly withdrew her hand, which made it easier for Su Qinghui to move. There was a faint smile on Su Qinghui's lips. He seemed to be quite happy with Li Qianshue's cooperation. Li Qianxue blushed. She turned her face away from Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui was not young anymore. He was also past the age of impulsiveness. But when he saw Li Qianshue's snow-white skin, he couldn't help but breathe heavily. Taking a deep breath, he collected his thoughts and focused his attention on the matter at hand. Holding a towel, he wiped Li Qianshue's body bit by bit. Li Qianshue's body trembled slightly, and the places that were touched by the warm water turned a beautiful pink. She heard Su Qinghui's breathing getting heavier. The hand that wasn't in a cast was tightly clenched into a fist. In the end, Su Qinghui overestimated his self-control. He thought that he could restrain himself. But he found that it wasn't that easy. After wiping his upper body, his back was already covered in sweat. Next, it was time to test his self-control. He went to the bathroom to change the water and washed his face with cold water. After calming down, he went out again. Li Qianxue had already pulled up her clothes and covered her body with the quilt. Su Qinghui's eyes flashed with disappointment, but he quickly felt relieved. He walked to the bed and didn't have time to do anything. Li Qianxue had already begun to glare at him. There's no need to wipe. Li Qianxue was so embarrassed just now that she wanted to die. If this continued, she would be even more unwilling. That's it. How can that be? Su Qinghui stubbornly stepped forward and began to lift the quilt. Wipe it clean so that you can sleep. Su Qinghui, be good. I promise I'll just help you wipe your body. When he said that, Li Qianshue's hands and feet were inconvenient. She could only watch as he began his animal behavior again. He took off her hospital pants and began to wipe the crescent moon for him. Li Qianshue's face was so red that it looked like it was about to drip blood. The two of them had been married for more than 20 years, and there was almost no time for them to be truly intimate. She had once fantasized that one day Su Qinghui would be willing to treat her like a real wife. But now he was really treating her like this, but it was after they divorced. Thinking about it this way, it was really a little ironic. Feeling the warm touch somewhere, she suddenly reacted. She saw Su Qinghui holding a towel and wiping the root of her leg. Su Qinghui, she immediately called out. Su Qinghui didn't stop his movements. Don't move, it'll be very fast. You, be good. You're already like this. What can I do to you? He wasn't that animal, although he also wanted to. Li Qianxue gritted her teeth and glared at Su Qinghui hatefully. She found that there was sweat on his forehead. Her gaze inadvertently swept down, and when she saw the tent he had set up somewhere, her expression changed. Su Qinghui, you bastard. Su Qinghui was almost done. Because of Li Qianshue's words, he couldn't help but glance at her. As soon as he stood up, his body's reaction was directly exposed to Li Qianshue's eyes. Looking at her ugly expression, he tried his best to suppress his body's reaction. However, that woman's hand was clearly injured, but she still hurriedly began to pull up the blanket. He pressed down on her restless hand with one hand, threw the towel to the side, and folded his entire body on top of her. He knew that she was injured, so he didn't use too much force. He just stared at her face, his gaze burning. I love you. It's normal for me to have a reaction to you. Shameless. Li Qianxue glared at him. Su Qinghui lowered his head and suddenly kissed her lips. She couldn't react and couldn't move. She watched as his face enlarged in front of her and then robbed her of her breath and sweetness. After the kiss ended, her breathing became unstable and her body went limp. He propped one hand on the side of her neck and stared at her with a burning gaze. Just now, I really wanted to help you clean up. Now this is shameless. He pecked her lips again. When he got up again, not only did his body's reaction not subside, but it became even stronger. Li Qianxue watched him carry the water into the bathroom, but he didn't come out for a long time. She could even hear Su Qinghui calling her name in the bathroom. Bastard, shameless, hooligan. Why didn't she know that behind Su Qinghui's elegance, there was such a shameless side? She was so embarrassed that she wanted to sleep, but she could clearly hear the sound of Su Qinghui's breathing. He clearly did it on purpose. He deliberately didn't close the door and deliberately let her hear it. She gritted her teeth and really wanted to beat this man up. After an unknown period of time, Su Qinghui finally came out. He walked directly to Li Qianshue's bed and stood still. She wasn't asleep and was also looking at him. Did you hear it? I didn't hear anything. Li Qianxue turned her face away and didn't look at Su Qinghui at all. You just heard it? Su Qinghui looked at her face with a smile in his eyes. He bent down and leaned close to her ear. Do you know? Qianxue. For more than a year when I can't sleep at night I have to think of you to fall asleep. When he said sleep he definitely didn't mean that. Li Qianxue came from a good family background. Even if they were talking about cooperation in the business world, no one would have the guts to talk dirty in front of her. Suddenly hearing Su Qinghui's words, her face turned green. Su Qinghui, you're shameless. I hope that one day in the future, I won't have to think of you to sleep. Su Qinghui sat down by the bed and held her hand. Instead I can hug you to sleep. Dream on. Li Qianxue sneered and pulled her hand back. There will never be such a day. There's a word called dream come true. Qianxue, do you think my dream will come true one day? I've already said that since it's a dream, of course it won't come true. She would never allow that day to come. I think that day will come. As Su Qinghui spoke, he lay down on the hospital bed. One hand wrapped around her shoulder. Aren't I hugging you to sleep like this? Su Qinghui, get up. Li Qianxue didn't expect that Su Qinghui was still taking advantage of her at this time. How could she not be angry? Su Qinghui's reaction was to bury his face in her neck. He closed his eyes and greedily breathed in her scent. Qianxue, I'm so happy. I'm not happy that you're hurt. I'm happy that I can finally hug you like this. Qianxue. Qianxue, he kissed her neck. Li Qianxue's body began to tremble. She finally couldn't stand it anymore and pushed him. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue used all her strength to push his body away from her. She held his arm with one hand and glared at him coldly. Are you happy? Unfortunately, I'm not happy. She looked at the gentleness on Su Qinghui's face and felt that it was piercing to her eyes. You want your dream to come true? I have to cooperate with you, right? Then do you know that there's another word, dream shattering? You want to sleep by my side, you want to hug me to sleep, and I have to let you fulfill your wish? What about the years before that? Su Qinghui, tell me, what were the years before that? 26 years, from the time I married you to the time I divorced you. Every day, I dreamed that one day you will accept me and be with me. I dreamed that one day, you could forget the moonlight in your heart and fall in love with me. Su Qinghui, you've never made my dream come true. What right do you have to put on such a loving look and make me accept you? Fulfill your wish? Su Qinghui, tell me. You've only been together for a little more than a year and you think you've given up a lot? You think you're so amazing? Let me tell you, I'm not touched at all. I just feel disgusted. If you think you're amazing, then let me ask you, who am I going to look for in those 20 years? Who am I going to look for to compensate me? Her emotions fluctuated a little, which affected the wounds on her hands and feet, which made her expression not look good. The atmosphere in the ward was extremely gloomy. Li Qianxue looked at him with a cold gaze. I forced myself not to think about who was right and who was wrong in the past. But, please don't pretend to be affectionate to disgust me. Now, please get up and get out of my bed. Su Qinghui looked at her deeply. He didn't miss any trace of emotion in her eyes. His heart was filled with bitterness. Yes, this was an unequal sacrifice. How could he ask Li Qianxue to accept him in such a short time? He left Li Qianxue's bed very slowly, sat down by the bed and looked at Li Qianxue's face. She didn't look at him and even turned her face away. He smiled helplessly. I'm sorry, Qianxue. He was too excited today and forgot that there had been more than 20 years of alienation and indifference between him and Li Qianxue. He really shouldn't have been so arrogant. I'm sorry. Li Qianxue didn't look at him. Instead, she closed her eyes tightly. Su Qinghui stood up and looked at her stiff back. He had a lot to say but he couldn't say a word. You should rest. I'll go sleep on the other bed. He turned around and walked a few steps to the side, then turned back again. Qianxue. Maybe you don't believe me but my affection isn't fake. Li Qianxue's reaction to him was to turn her face to the other side and show him the back of her head again. Su Qinghui woke up very early. When he got up, Li Qianxue also happened to open her eyes. The two of them looked at each other and neither of them spoke. Su Qinghui's lips moved and he finally went to the bathroom to wash up. When he came out again he had filled Li Qianxue with water and squeezed toothpaste on her toothbrush. Li Qianxue was still in a cold war with him last night. Now that he was taking care of her, she was a little reluctant. Her gaze inadvertently met the faint green shadow in Su Qinghui's eyes. She didn't say what she wanted him to call the nurse. She brushed her teeth with her uninjured hand. Su Qinghui held the cup for her and handed it over when she wanted to rinse her mouth. His angle was just right and Li Qianxue saved a lot of effort. She couldn't help but look at him again. Su Qinghui didn't say a word. After she brushed her teeth, he brought a towel to wash her face. In fact, Li Qianxue usually used facial cleanser at home. Now that her hand was injured, she could only make do with it. She wanted him to give her the towel, but he wouldn't let her. He wiped her face very carefully and washed it very seriously. After he was done, his phone just happened to ring. It was Su Yusin. He was going to work at the Li Corporation and brought food to Li Qianxue. Old Master Li also came with him. Su Qinghui hung up the phone and glanced at Li Qianxue. Yusin will bring food over soon. Have a glass of water first. Su Qinghui had just poured the water when someone knocked on the door of the ward. He didn't know who came so early, even earlier than Su Yusin and the others. Chapter 738. Wei Ting's mental state today seemed to be much better than yesterday. He didn't know what old Master Li said to him yesterday, but when he looked at Su Qinghui again, his gaze was a little smug. Please make way. He held a large bouquet of roses in one hand and a large bag in the other. Su Qinghui recognized the logo on the bag. It was a very famous hotel in Lin City, and it had a special breakfast. He stood there, not intending to give in to Wei Ting. President Wei Qianxue just woke up. It's not convenient. What's not convenient? Wei Ting didn't know what politeness was. Qianxue just woke up, so she's hungry. Did you see that? I brought breakfast for her. He shook the box in his hand and moved closer to Su Qinghui. But don't worry, there's nothing for you. He said this very softly. Seeing the slight change in Su Qinghui's expression, he directly squeezed past his body and went into the ward. It wasn't that Su Qinghui couldn't stop him, but Li Qianxue had already heard the sound of him entering the door. Qianxue, how are you? When Wei Ting saw that Li Qianxue had already woken up, the smile on his face became even brighter. Wei Ting. When Li Qianxue saw him, her expression was a little strange. She thought that old Master Li had convinced him when he brought Wei Ting home yesterday. What was Dad doing? I brought you breakfast. Wei Ting looked at Li Qianxue and smiled gently. Try it. I specially queued up to buy it. It's all very exquisite breakfast. Li Qianxue didn't reply and Wei Ting moved quickly. He first put the flowers aside. Then he laid out the breakfast. There was a small table on the hospital bed, and the breakfast was placed all over the table. The portion wasn't much, but each portion seemed to taste pretty good. Come try it. It's still warm. I specially asked the waiter to bring 2 layers of insulation boxes. Li Qianxue looked at the chopsticks in his hand and didn't know what kind of expression to put on for a moment. Su Qinghui stood not far behind Wei Ting and stared at the man coldly. When Wei Ting handed the chopsticks to Li Qianxue, his eyes flashed. He took a few steps forward and took the chopsticks in his hand. You? Wei Ting turned to look at him. Su Qinghui's expression did not change. He looked at Li Qianxue gently. Qianxue, Yusin will bring breakfast soon. Nanny Zhang's cooking is hygienic and nutritious. As for these, I don't know where they got them from, so you don't have to eat them. Su Qinghui, what do you mean? Wei Ting was young after all. Because of Su Qinghui's actions, he was a little impatient. Can't you see clearly? Look carefully, this is Jean Meishuan's breakfast. Really? Su Qinghui looked at his exasperated face, and his expression became more certain than before. Then I'll have to try it. President Wei. Su Qinghui raised his eyebrows and looked at him. You don't mind, do you? Of course, mind. Wei Ting was interrupted by Su Qinghui. Of course you don't mind. I know. Then I'll thank you in advance for breakfast. Qianxue. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue. This breakfast is a little greasy. Don't eat it. Greasy? Wei Ting was furious. How is it oily? How is it greasy? He was still talking, but Su Qinghui had already started eating. His movements were so fast that he didn't have time to stop him. Li Qianxue sat there and watched the 2 men's childish behavior. She didn't want to speak anymore. President Su? Wei Ting gritted his teeth. Now he really felt that the back of his teeth was hurting. You don't have to eat so fast, do you? Of course I have to eat faster. Even though Su Qinghui's eating movements were very fast, it couldn't hide his elegance at this moment. His steadiness, which had been immersed in the business world for many years, overwhelmed Wei Ting in terms of aura. After all, Yusin will bring breakfast over later. I still have to take care of Qianshua's meal. It's okay. I'm also very happy to take care of Qianxue. It's useless if you're happy because Qianxue isn't. Su Qinghui slowly picked up a crystal dumpling and put it into his mouth. Wei Ting glared at him and then at him again. When he turned to look at Li Qianxue, he couldn't help but look a little aggrieved. Qianxue, you don't mind, right? Li Qianxue frowned. Let Wei Ting take care of her? Wei Ting, today doesn't seem to be the weekend? Was this in order to chase him away? Wei Ting's expression became more and more depressed. It doesn't matter to me. Qinshue, it doesn't matter if I don't go to work. I like to accompany you. I don't need your company. Li Qinshue rejected him very clearly. You should go to work. If you don't want me to accompany you, do you want him to accompany you? Wei Ting pointed at Su Qinghui. Other than the aggrieved expression on his face, there was also a hint of shock and disbelief. Wei Ting. Unfortunately, Li Qinshue didn't like his tone. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with you? Of course it does. Wei Ting looked at the people who had dealt with most of the breakfast he brought and felt depressed. How can he be worthy of you? Look at him, President Wei. Su Qinghui put down the chopsticks in his hand and slowly took out a tissue from the side to wipe the corner of his mouth. Whether I'm worthy or not, it doesn't seem to be up to you to decide. He looked at Li Qinshue with a burning gaze. Qinshue has the final say. Su Qinghui couldn't be blamed for being so sure. He and Li Qinshue had been husband and wife for many years. Even if they divorced, even if they broke up. With Li Qinshue's personality, she wouldn't do anything to ruin his reputation outside. Li Qinshue definitely wouldn't say something that belittled him like this. Qinshue. Wei Ting looked at Li Qinshue, waiting for her to stand up for him. You don't really think so, do you? How could a person like Su Qinghui be worthy of Li Qinshue? What kind of joke was this? Wei Ting. Li Qinshue really had a headache when she saw this. She wasn't in the mood to continue arguing with Wei Ting. Go to work. We really don't need you here. Qinshue? Wei Ting's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that Li Qinshue would rather choose Su Qinghui than him. Mom. He was still in disbelief when Su Yusen arrived on the other side. He saw Wei Ting the moment he entered the door. Naturally, he knew this man. He was a tech upstart in Lin City. It was said that he was pursuing his mother. Su Yusen's feelings were a little complicated. On one hand, he was naturally happy that Li Qinshue still had such charm at her age. On the other hand, he felt a little uncomfortable. His mother was being pursued by a man so many years younger than her? Regardless of whether it would work out or not, he only hoped that Li Qinshue wouldn't get hurt. I brought you soup. In fact, the hospital had nutritious meals, but Su Qinghui insisted that the nutritious meals in the hospital were not delicious. Even old Master Li felt the same way. It was really because the Li Corporation had shares in this hospital. How could ordinary patients have such treatment? Su Yusen walked forward and saw the breakfast that looked like it had been eaten on the table beside the hospital bed. Mom, it's nothing. Su Qinghui wouldn't let Wei Ting leave a good impression in front of his son. President Wei is my friend. He saw that I was working hard to take care of your mother, so he brought me breakfast. Wei Ting stared at Su Qinghui and felt that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. What did Su Qinghui mean? Who brought it to him? Thank you, Mr. Wei. Su Yusen put down the lunchbox very politely. Sorry to trouble you, Mr. Wei. Is there anything else? Wei Ting's face turned green. He didn't expect that in such a short period of time, he would be asked to leave by Li Qinshue and Su Yusen. This feeling was really fresh, very fresh. He couldn't help but look at Li Qinshue again. Qinshue, did you see that? Your ex-husband bullied me and your son also bullied me? Everyone bullied me. Wei Ting, you can go back first. There's Yusen and the nurse here. I'm fine. Qinshue. I want to take care of you. I really don't need you to take care of me. The nurse of this hospital and Yusen are all here. Wei Ting couldn't argue with her. In the end, no matter how reluctant he was, he still left the ward. After he left, Su Qinghui was happy, and Li Qinshue was more or less at ease. She chose Su Qinghui between Su Qinghui and Wei Ting. It didn't mean that she forgave Su Qinghui. But in such a situation, she was more willing to leave behind someone who made her feel controllable and didn't make her feel so uncomfortable. Just like yesterday, Su Yusen scooped soup for Li Qinshue and was about to feed her. The bowl was taken away by Su Qinghui again. Let me do it. Go and ask the nurse to take away the food on this table. How could Su Yusen not know what Su Qinghui wanted to do? He glanced at him and directly went to clean it up himself. Now he only hoped that since he was so tactful and quick, Su Qinghui would quickly settle Li Qinshue. Li Qinshue and Su Qinghui didn't say anything. Although she cooperated with Su Qinghui and opened her mouth, she remained silent and didn't speak. Su Qinghui liked to take care of Li Qinshue. Even the smallest things would make him feel happy and satisfied. It didn't matter whether Li Qinshue accepted him or not, but he had to do these things. He had to let Li Qinshue feel his heart for her. After breakfast, Su Yusin went straight to the Li Corporation. The Li Corporation didn't have so many things for him to do. The decisions were arranged by Li Qianxue. However, Su Yusin obviously didn't want to be a third wheel between his parents, so he could only leave. After his son left, Su Qinghui felt even more at ease. Qianxue, do you want to eat some fruit? Qianxue, is it comfortable to sleep like this? Do you want me to help you adjust the pillow a little higher? Qianxue, do you want to watch TV? I'll turn on the TV for you to watch. Qianxue, the latest issue of Second Finance and Economics is here. Do you want me to read it to you? Qianxue? The repeated calls of Qianxue gave Li Qianxue a headache. She looked at Su Qinghui, but there wasn't much joy or emotion in her eyes. You're very noisy. I just want to have a quiet rest. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue's cold expression and couldn't say anything else for a moment. Qianxue. Then you rest. Li Qianxue's world finally became quiet, but this wasn't enough. Because Su Qinghui was sitting by the bed and staring at her with a burning gaze. That feeling was like a knife on her back. Even if she closed her eyes, she still couldn't hide it. She gritted her teeth and couldn't take it anymore. She opened her eyes and glared at Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui, that's enough, right? Can you stop staring at me? Su Qinghui had no idea how he had offended her to cause her to react so strongly. Qianxue? Do you have nothing to do? If you have nothing to do, please go out. I don't want to see you. Qianxue, I know. I just want to accompany me, right? Li Qianxue's tone was a little cold. But I'm sorry, I don't need anyone to accompany me now. Qianxue? Are you leaving or not? If you don't leave, I'll leave. It was just a transfer. She had the ability to do so. Su Qinghui didn't say anything else. He didn't feel at ease leaving just like that. After thinking for a while, he stood up. Since you want to rest, you can rest. I'll go get you a pot of water. Li Qianxue turned her face to the side. What water? He was just looking for an excuse to stay. After 2 days, she didn't chase him away. Perhaps it gave him some illusions. Li Qianxue didn't like such illusions. She watched Su Qinghui go out with the hot water bottle and knew that he would come back later. For a moment, she was a little annoyed. However, no matter how hard Su Qinghui tried, it was useless. As long as she was firm, Su Qinghui wouldn't be able to shake her. In the following time, Li Qianxue tried her best to ignore Su Qinghui. She tried her best to keep a distance from him. It was a subtle yet distant feeling, a sense of alienation. She didn't say anything to provoke Su Qinghui. When a person reached a certain stage, these words were no longer useful. Yesterday she said so harshly, but Su Qinghui didn't think of leaving. It could be seen that he was either thick-skinned, or he really wanted to be with her. No matter which one it was, Li Qianxue hated and disliked it. There was a voice deep in her heart telling her that that feeling wasn't pure hatred and dislike. It was that she was afraid that things would become like before. However, she suppressed this voice. She also thought about her uncontrollable heartbeat when Su Qinghui wiped her body last night. She thought about the trace of palpitation she felt in the depths of her heart ever since Su Qinghui hugged her. Li Qianxue didn't like these abnormal reactions. She was a very calm person. Perhaps, before Su Qinghui went further, she could do something. She should think of a chance to completely drive Su Qinghui out of her life. As for those minor losses of control, she would ignore them all. That's right, it was just a momentary loss of control. The door of the ward opened and closed. After a while it opened again. She thought that it was Su Qinghui who had returned and was thinking about how to explain it to him. However, she saw that the person who came in wasn't Su Qinghui at all, but Luo Cheng. President Luo? Seeing Luo Cheng, Li Qianxue's sleepiness disappeared. She didn't quite understand why Luo Cheng was here. Qianxue, I heard that you had a car accident? I'm really sorry. I just received the news last night, so I only had time to see you today. Luo Cheng smiled very warmly. He was also carrying a large pile of nutrition products in his hand. Chapter 739. The ward was a VIP ward and it was very big. Apart from the big room there was another small room. There was a bathroom and a kitchen nearby. Just now, in order to get Su Qinghui out of her sight, Li Qianxue didn't even leave a nurse behind. Now, only she and Luo Cheng were left in the huge ward. Luo Cheng carried the things in his hands and slowly walked in the direction of the bed. Xioli, I'm sorry. They're all worthless toys, but they're still good for your body. If you're injured, you can slowly nourish yourself. We'll need it eventually. President Luo, you're too kind. Li Qianxue's voice was a little more polite than before. Thank you for making the trip. President Li, You don't have to be so polite. Luo Qing smiled more affectionately than before. Li Qianxue frowned at his natural and familiar attitude. She was now sitting on the bed. She was sitting and he was standing. Especially now that she was injured, her complexion was not good. His aura was always a little lacking. Boss Luo, you're too polite. She, who couldn't move her hands and feet, hoped that someone would appear quickly. She had been in the business world for a long time, so how could she not understand that Luo Qing had other intentions? No one knew what he was after. It's only right that I come to see you. We don't have to be so polite. As Luo Qing spoke, he walked towards the bed. He casually placed the things in his hands on the bedside and was about to sit down by the bed. Li Qianxue looked out of the ward. She remembered that she had driven Su Qinghui away before. Now she hoped that he would come back soon. On the other side, Su Qinghui went to get some water and was about to rush to the ward. In the end, when he turned the corner, he accidentally bumped into a person. That person almost bumped into him. In order not to let the hot water bottle fall to the ground and break, and also in order not to get the water on the other party's body, Su Qinghui took 2 big steps back and the man kept apologizing. I'm sorry. The crisp female voice was filled with guilt and self-blame. Su Qinghui looked at the person in front of him. It was a young girl in her early 20s. She looked well dressed. I'm sorry, sir. Did I step on you just now? The little girl had a guilty look on her face. Su Qinghui looked at the little girl who was about the same age as his daughter and shook his head. I'm fine. The other party had stepped on him, but that kind of force didn't affect him much. I'm really sorry. The girl lowered her head and saw the footprint on Su Qinghui's shoe. Su Qinghui's shoes were all custom-made in Italy. There was a shoe print on the smooth shoes which made people feel bad. Do you want to take off your shoes and let me clean them for you? There's really no need. Seeing the panic and guilt in the little girl's eyes, Su Qinghui didn't plan to pursue the matter further. He had to hurry back to the ward to accompany Li Qianxue. Whether she wanted him to accompany her was one thing, but whether he wanted to accompany her was another. No, I must help you wipe it. As the girl spoke, she squatted down and took out a tissue from her bag to wipe Su Qinghui's shoes. Seeing this, Su Qinghui instinctively moved his feet back. There's really no need. Yes, I must. The little girl squatted down and wiped Su Qinghui's shoes with a tissue. Su Qinghui had been living like a prince all these years. He had people taking care of him wherever he went, but he wouldn't let a little girl do such a thing. However, he was still holding a thermos in his hand. He couldn't stop the little girl in front of him. He felt a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would have asked Xiao Jiang to fetch water. The little girl wiped very carefully, and it was not convenient for Su Qinghui to withdraw his foot. From time to time, people passed by. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them, and their gazes at Su Qinghui were somewhat inexplicable. Su Qinghui became more and more uncomfortable. Okay, that's enough. Okay. The little girl stood up and looked at the shoes that were as clean as before. She breathed a sigh of relief. I'm really sorry. It's all my fault. It doesn't matter. Su Qinghui didn't intend to pester her any further. He still had to go to the ward. You're really a good person. The little girl stopped him again. She looked at him and her eyes flickered. I still have to thank you for not arguing with me. It really doesn't matter. Su Qinghui's eyes were already showing impatience. The little girl stuck out her tongue. Sorry, I seem to have wasted your time. Then I'll leave first. Thank you again. She stepped back as she spoke. Su Qinghui looked at her and suddenly felt a little strange. When she made a face just now, at first glance, it actually looked a little like Su Peixian. In this moment of distraction, the little girl took a step forward. Uncle, you're really a good person. I hope I'll have the chance to see you next time. Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He looked at the little girl who looked a little similar to Su Peixian and stood there without moving. Goodbye, uncle. The little girl waved her hand and left. The moment she turned around, that side profile was even more similar. Su Qinghui's hand that was holding the hot water bottle tightened slightly. He thought of his daughter who was serving her sentence in Rong City. He didn't know how Su Peixian was doing now. Speaking of which, during this period of time, in order to make Li Qianxue accept him, he hadn't seen Su Peixian for a long time. Perhaps the next time he visited Su Qingseng, he would also visit Su Peixian. In the ward, Luo Qing sat on the bed. Such an overly intimate and friendly attitude made Li Qianxue's expression turn ugly. Qianxue. Luo Qing suddenly spoke, but he didn't call out to President Li politely. I was really worried when I found out that you were injured. Only then did I realize that my attention to you was far from that of an ordinary friend. Qinxue, can I call you by your name? He had already called her that and now he was asking this question? Li Qinxue didn't respond to his words. President Luo, the investment case you mentioned last time? The investment case isn't important. What's important is my feelings for you. Luo Qing raised his hand forward and looked at Li Qinxue. Qinxue, I don't care about that investment case. What I care about is you. President Luo, you might have misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand. Luo Qing couldn't wait to express his feelings. My feelings for you come from the bottom of my heart. Please believe me. As he spoke, he even reached out to hold Li Qinshue's hand. Li Qinshu didn't expect him to suddenly move. One of her hands was already in a cast, and now that the other hand was held by him, she felt very uncomfortable. She tried to pull her hand back, but Luo Qing held her hand in his palm. Qinshu, give me a chance to take care of you. I will prove that I am a qualified husband. President Luo. Li Qinshu didn't expect this man to be so strong. Unfortunately, her other hand was injured. She couldn't even pull it out forcefully. Annoyed, he was thinking of using his hand that was in a cast to hit Luo Qing without a care. Before she could take action, Luo Qing's body had already been pulled up and pushed to the side. Li Qinshu looked at Su Qinghui who had suddenly appeared. He stood there, half of his body in front of her bed, and his hands were clenched into fists by his side. President Luo. He looked at Luo Qing coldly, his eyes sharp and cold. You've crossed the line. Luo Qing didn't expect Su Qinghui to suddenly appear. He had clearly asked someone to hold him back. President Su, it doesn't seem appropriate for you to say that, does it? Luo Qing looked at Su Qinghui with the posture of a protector. Qinshu has already divorced you. Then she has the right to be with other men, don't you think? She does have that right. But she also has the right to refuse. Su Qinghui's expression didn't change. From the looks of it, I don't see Qinshu having any plans to accept you. Or, President Luo, do you think that having physical contact with others without their consent is a sign of respect for women? Is that disrespecting women? Luo Qing looked a little embarrassed. I just couldn't help it. President Luo said that you couldn't help it, but I think it's better for you to restrain yourself next time. After all, Qinshu isn't a casual woman. She can't help it if she wants to cooperate with President Luo. Luo Qing's face alternated between green and white from Su Qinghui's words. He knew that he had been reckless today. Now that the opportunity had failed, he could only find another opportunity. President Su, you're thinking too much. I respect Qinshu quite a lot. He looked at Li Qinshu, and his expression was much softer than before. Qinshu, don't think too much. I really didn't mean anything else just now. Li Qinshu didn't say anything. Her background was there and she couldn't put on an even uglier expression. She just had a cold expression. If Su Qinghui hadn't come in time, she had no doubt that she would have broken Luo Qing's head with a cast. Now that things had developed to this point, Luo Qing couldn't continue to stay. After saying a few more soft words, he left. Li Qinshu didn't relax just because Luo Qing had left. Her expression was very ugly. She hated being touched by someone she didn't like. The place where Luo Qing held her hand almost made her want to chop off that hand. However, before she could react, Su Qinghui had already entered the bathroom first. When he came out again, there was a basin of water in his hand. He picked up the towel inside and walked in front of her. He picked up her hand and started to wipe it. Su Qinghui's movements weren't as gentle as yesterday and he used more force. He lowered his face and his half-closed eyes were gentle and calm. Li Qinshu looked at his movements, and an electric current flowed through her heart. It was a momentary heartbeat. She could clearly feel that the man in front of her reminded her of the first time she saw him more than 20 years ago, and that her heart had been moved. Luo Qing left the hospital gate and was in the parking lot outside. A figure was waiting there. When he saw the person, his expression didn't look good. Didn't I ask you to lure Su Qinghui away? Why did you let him return to the ward so quickly? Speaking of which, Luo Qing was really thinking too much. Even without Su Qinghui, with Li Qinshu's personality, she wouldn't let him take advantage of her. It didn't make sense to blame him now. Jing Shu looked at the accusation in Luo Qing's eyes and chuckled. Uncle, don't be anxious. What's the matter? Take your time. She smiled brightly. If Su Qinghui was here, he would realize that she was the little girl who wanted to clean his shoes just now. What do you mean? Luo Qing was unhappy after being humiliated by Su Qinghui today. Uncle. Jing Shu was about the same age as Luo Qing's daughter Luo Yu. She had been studying in another city. She had recently graduated and her mother and Luo Qing could be considered cousins. He asked her to come to Lin City to look for Luo Qing and ask him to arrange something for her to do. Unexpectedly, after Jing Shu came to Lin City, Luo Qing unexpectedly found that his niece looked somewhat similar to Su Qinghui's former daughter, Su Peixian. This was really a pleasant surprise. He wanted to pursue Li Qianxue, and Su Qinghui was a stumbling block. If he could let Jing Shu use her appearance to distract Su Qinghui, then he would be able to make his presence known in front of Li Qianxue. I think that instead of thinking of a way to make Su Qinghui unable to hinder you, it's better to solve this problem completely. We might as well solve this problem once and for all. What do you think? What do you mean, uncle? Jing Shu gestured with her hands and gestured to herself. What do you think of me? Luo Qing looked at Jing Shu and didn't understand what he wanted to do. Jing Shu wasn't bad looking. Her eyebrows and eyes were somewhat similar to Su Peixian's, so she was naturally bright and pretty. The most important thing was that she was young and energetic. Jing Shu, your mother asked you to come to Lin City so that I could take care of you. I never thought. Although he had a purpose, he wouldn't send his niece to Su Qinghui's side. Even if this niece was his cousin. Uncle, I think you can think about it now. Jing Shu thought of the gentleness and elegance on Su Qinghui's face when he smiled just now, and her heart skipped a beat. Jing Shu, about your mother? Uncle, you don't have to worry about my mother. I just want to tell you that I've taken a fancy to Su Qinghui. Are you crazy? Luo Qing glared at the little girl in front of him. Do you know how old he is? He can be your father. So what? Jing Shu blinked and was very confident in herself. I just like him. Can't I? Jing Shu, uncle, if I can take down Su Qinghui, won't that solve your problem? Luo Qing didn't say anything. His plan didn't include this. He just wanted Su Qinghui to be unable to disturb him. Alright, uncle. Don't be too old-fashioned. In this society, what kind of love doesn't exist? Su Qinghui isn't young. But such a man is mature and charming. I like this kind of man. Don't try to persuade me. Really wait for me to take down Su Qinghui. It'll be good for you too. Isn't that so? Luo Qing couldn't refute that. In fact, he was the one who asked Jing Shu to trip Su Qinghui. Speaking of which, if it weren't for him, Jing Shu wouldn't have fallen for Su Qinghui. Let's go. Uncle, I also need to think about how to take down that old man. Jing Shu's eyes flashed with determination. Luo Qing wanted to persuade her, but he thought that if Su Qinghui was really taken down by Jing Shu, the success rate of him pursuing Li Qianxue would be completely different. All right. I won't persuade you anymore. But as for your mother, you can talk to her yourself when the time comes. Got it? Also, that Su Qinghui is already a grandfather. You don't be too serious. If you really can't do it, then forget it. Don't worry. Jing Shu raised her hand and looked at it. I will definitely take him down. Chapter 740. Su Qinghui didn't know that he was being targeted. He wiped the water off Li Qianxue's hands. Qianxue, I won't let you go alone next time. Although Luo Qing might not dare to do anything, Su Qinghui was still worried. If you want to fetch water or anything else tomorrow, let Xiaojiang go. I'll accompany you. No need. Li Qianxue wasn't a weak person who needed protection. I can take care of it myself. Su Qinghui knew that she wouldn't listen to him, and he also knew that she was used to rejecting him. He didn't intend to convince her, but he had already made up his mind. In the future, he would definitely not let Li Qianxue go alone. Are you thirsty? Do you want some water? Li Qianxue shook her head and looked at the gentleness in Su Qinghui's eyes. She thought of the moment when she was moved. In the end, she couldn't say those ruthless words. She didn't say it, but Su Qinghui always wanted to take care of her. He got up and washed some fruit for her and cut it. He used a small toothpick to fork the fruit piece by piece and brought it to the bed. Qianxue, eat the fruit. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue wanted to say that what he did was useless. She wouldn't be soft-hearted, nor would she appreciate it. But when the sweet fruit was placed in his mouth and he looked at her with a gentle expression, she couldn't say a single word after that. Li Qianxue silently ate the fruit that Su Qinghui fed her. She didn't even notice that she still had one hand that could move freely, but she didn't move it again. Su Qinghui was quite satisfied with such a change. It didn't matter. He could take it slow. Until Li Qianxue wanted to go to the bathroom and asked him to call Xiaojiang in. What's wrong? Tell me what you want to take. I'll help you. Li Qianxue glared at Su Qinghui's face and gritted her teeth. I want to go to the bathroom. I'll carry you. No need. She could do it herself. Li Qianxue rejected his hand. Call Xiaojiang in for me. Qianxue. Su Qinghui looked at the rejection in her eyes. Ignoring her rejection, he reached out and picked her up. Su Qinghui, don't worry, I'm just carrying you in. Su Qinghui worked out all year round. Although he wasn't young anymore, he was still quite strong. Li Qianxue was not heavy, so he easily picked her up and headed for the bathroom. The moment he put Li Qianxue down, she stood firmly on one foot. However, she found it a little difficult. Then she lost her balance and fell into Su Qinghui's arms. She put a hand on Su Qinghui's chest. Get out. Su Qinghui looked at her reluctant face and reached out to take off her pants. You, be good, it's inconvenient for you to use one hand. I can. As if to prove her words, she swatted his hand away and reached for her hospital pants with one hand. However, she had underestimated the severity of her injury. Before she could pull down her pants, her bandaged feet could no longer stand. Her body tilted and she fell into Su Qinghui's arms again. This time, Su Qinghui didn't let go of her, nor did he let her push him away. Su Qingsang rushed over. When she entered the ward, she found that the environment of the ward was a little strange. Li Qianxue half leaned on the hospital bed, her face a little red. Su Qinghui was sitting by the bed looking at Li Qianxue. Mom? Dad? Qingsang? Qingsang, you're here? Both of them were surprised to see Su Qingsang. Especially Li Qianxue. Didn't I tell you not to come? It's so far away and now the weather is starting to get hot again. How are you? Are you tired? Why don't you go home and rest first? Mom? She asked a series of questions and Su Qingsang didn't know which one to answer first. I'm not very tired. I wanted to come yesterday but I arranged the things at hand. As she spoke, Li Qianxue looked behind her. Where's Hu Jinyao? He has something to do at the company. He'll come later. Mom, are you okay? Only then did Su Qingsang have time to observe Li Qianxue's body. When she saw the cast on Li Qianxue's hand, she stepped forward with concern. Why is your injury so serious? Is your hand okay? It's fine. Li Qianxue shook her head. Su Qingsang didn't know. She looked at Li Qianxue and immediately realized that something was wrong. Mom, why is your face so red? Do you have a fever? After trauma, it was easy to get infected and have a fever. These were all things to pay attention to. As a doctor, how could Su Qingsang not know this? She suddenly became nervous. Mom, did the doctor make his ward rounds today? Did he ask the doctor to check you? Yes, he did. Li Qianxue was too embarrassed to tell her daughter why she was blushing. Should she say that it was because Su Qinghui insisted on taking off her pants? And then, she couldn't say it and her face was full of uneasiness. Su Qingsang was even more worried now. She raised her hand and placed it on Li Qianxue's forehead. It's not hot. But you can't let your guard down. I'd better ask the doctor to check you. When she said this, she was about to go outside. Li Qianxue quickly grabbed her hand. Mom, I'm really fine. It's just a little hot. Don't run around. Sit down and talk to Mom. Oh. Su Qingsang nodded and looked at Su Qinghui. He knew very well what Su Qinghui had done just now. He also knew why Li Qianxue's face was red. Now that his daughter was here, he also knew that they had something to talk about. Since Qingsang is here, let her talk to you. He just happened to go to the company to deal with work. Okay, Dad, you go. Su Qingsang watched Su Qinghui leave and immediately sat down by the bed. Mom, has Dad been taking care of you here these past few days? The red on Li Qianxue's face because of anger hadn't faded. She nodded at her daughter's words. Yes, it's all because of him. Mom, I'm nothing. Li Qianxue interrupted her daughter. She didn't intend to talk to her about Su Qinghui. You, on the other hand, ran out like this. Think about what to do with Nian Nian? My mother-in-law. And Grandpa and the others. Don't worry. Don't worry. Li Qianxue glared at her daughter. Why didn't you bring them to see me? I came in a hurry and didn't have time to prepare. If you want to see them, I'll ask Hu Jinyao to bring them here tomorrow. Forget it. I was just saying it casually. Don't torture the two children. Li Qianxue was reluctant. I just think you're heartless. The children are so young. How am I heartless? Mom, you're already injured like this. If I don't come to see you, I'm really heartless. Su Qingsang's words made Li Qianxue smile. The uneasiness that she had felt because of Su Qinghui just now had mostly dissipated. Looking at her daughter who was getting closer and closer to her, she also relaxed. As for the previous episode, she tried her best to throw it to the back of her mind. Su Qinghui, that rascal, thought she would compromise just like that? Dream on. She wouldn't. Definitely not. Ignoring the throbbing in her heart, Li Qianxue forced herself to pretend that nothing had happened. Li Qinshua's hand was the most seriously injured. The injury on her foot only needed to slowly recuperate. After staying in the intensive care unit for 2 days, Xiao Zhao was also out of danger. Su Qingsang's return made Li Qinshu much happier. After getting the doctor's permission, she went home to recuperate. After all, it was much more convenient at home. She could also use this time to get rid of Su Qinghui. She lived at home. There was Nanny Zhang, Xiaotao and Xiaoyu at home. It was not Su Qinghui's turn to court her. Therefore, a day after Su Qingsang came, Li Qinshu went back to the Li family to recuperate. Su Qinghui knew that she was deliberately avoiding him, but he was not in a hurry. It was not like he couldn't enter the Li family. Not to mention that his son and daughter were at home now. They would not stop him from entering the house. Therefore, when Li Qinshu was pushed to the table in a wheelchair for dinner that night, she saw Su Qinghui again. This made her expression sour. She wanted to drive him away, but her son and daughter were both there today. Old Master Li's smile widened because of Su Qingsang's arrival. Under such circumstances, Li Qinshu could only endure it. She forced herself to pretend that she did not see Su Qinghui sitting directly next to her just now and focused on eating. At the dining table, Su Qingsang still wanted to take care of Li Qinshu and put some food in her bowl or something. Someone moved faster than she did. Su Qinghui scooped a bowl of soup for Li Qinshu. He did not eat himself but directly fed Li Qinshu. Li Qinshu met the eyes of the table and felt very uncomfortable for a moment. "I have hands." "Your hands are injured." Su Qinghui was very stubborn. The spoon in his hand was raised to Li Qinshu's mouth. "You." His daughter and son were both staring at her, and old Master Li was still sitting next to her. Li Qinshu refused to cooperate. "Su Qinghui, I can do it myself." "Yes, I know." Su Qinghui's expression did not change, as if he did not feel the slightest bit uncomfortable being stared at by others. "But this will be faster. Be good." His voice was very soft, so only they could hear each other. "You are injured. Let me feed you." Li Qinshu resisted the urge to swing the bowl in his hand away. Looking at her son and daughter's gazes, she had a hard time holding back. She lowered her voice and stared at the gentle face in front of her. She felt as if she had used all her strength but hit cotton. "Su Qinghui, I am not a child. But you are an injured patient." Su Qinghui moved the spoon forward a little more. Could it be that he was addicted to feeding her? Li Qinshu secretly gritted her teeth. When she was caught off guard, he had already fed her a spoonful of soup. Su Qingsang suddenly realized that she seemed to have seen something amazing. She couldn't help but look at Su Yusin. Su Yusin, however, looked calm. Yes, he had seen it in the hospital before, so he was not surprised. Old Master Li looked at Su Qinghui's actions, and a shrewd look flashed in his eyes. Fortunately, Su Qinghui knew when to stop. After feeding Li Qinshu, he chatted with Old Master Li in the living room for a while, then got up and left. Although he wanted to stay, he also knew the logic of taking things slowly. He would not force Li Qinshu to make a decision now. There was still a long way to go and he was not in a hurry. "Qinshu, have a good rest. I will leave first. I will see you tomorrow." Li Qinshu did not raise her head and spoke without thinking. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.